Morning. Good morning.
My name is Jan Marable, and I am the Director of Outreach and Education for Mental Health Awareness of Michiana. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the Mental Health Awareness 2025 Fall Summit that we are hosting in partnership with the St. Joe County Public Library. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors, our platinum sponsor, Oaklawn, also Bowen Health, Site Point, and MD Wise. Today could not happen without the work of our planning committee. We'd like to thank Ronna Plummer, Carl Hetler, Shara Marquez, Sabrina Avera, Leah Plank, Robin Vitas, Krista Holton, Anna Sawatsky, Ed Vassler, Jim Lefevre, Lisa Kelly, and myself. Our theme today is a very popular topic, responding to the times, policy, funding, and collaboration consideration. We will have a keynote, panel discussion, workshop, and group conversation. The summit is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Please remember at the end of the day to complete the evaluation for the summit. It's very helpful for us. Don't forget to visit the ballroom and gather all the free resources that our partner organizations have for you today. We have 25 organizations with resources today. And enjoy the light refreshment. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of Mental Health Awareness of Michiana, Lisa Kelly.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you for all your hard work pulling this together. I'm going to assume that most people know about our organization, Mental Health Awareness in Michiana, but I will very briefly just emphasize that while our goal is to try and improve the quality of life for those living with mental illness and mental health concerns in Michiana, the way that we do that is through initiatives that work to eliminate stigma, build collaboration, and remove barriers to mental health care. And normally at these summits, we try and highlight a relevant issue in the community, and we bring resources together that we think will be helpful for people to know about. As we were thinking about this summit and the time that we're in right now, we really felt that we're looking at community well-being and community well-being in the broadest sense, and that the various things that have been going on with funding shifts and policy shifts, I think we're all feeling that these are threats to the well-being of the community, even as we aren't quite sure what this is going to look like. We do know that there's a general anxiety in the community, and certainly nonprofit organizations are feeling that more acutely. So our goal today is, number one, to take a step back with our keynote speaker, and then to take a step in to look at the mood of nonprofits, what's actually happening with nonprofits in the community. And then we want to shift to what can we do about this? So what are proactive steps that we can take to get ready for whatever comes as a community? But the idea is that we are a community, all of us, care about, that you wouldn't be here if you didn't care about the communities of Michiana, St. Joe County, Elkhart County, Marshall County, the surrounding area. So we want to highlight the issues, but we also want people to feel like there is something that they can do going forward. So we have a lot of information packed into this morning. We had a tremendous registration. I know there's a lot going on in the community today, and I'm really happy that you're all here. So I'm going to introduce Jeff Shuck. Jeff is relatively new to our community, but he is new to nonprofits and small businesses. He's been a consultant for nonprofits for over 30 years. And we really wanted Jeff to come because he has that breadth of knowledge, that view of how do we sustain nonprofits in times that are difficult and maintain our mission to the community. So you can read more about Jeff in the program, but I'm happy to welcome Jeff to our place.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Thank you to Jan. Thank you to Lisa. Thank you to the planning committee, who I think said, who is this guy and why is he coming to speak to our community, and thank you for the work you do. You know, thank you for helping people who feel like there's nowhere to go, who have no one to talk to, who are stuck in their own thoughts. Thank you for that. And maybe we could just stop here and go right to the panel, because that's the biggest message I want you to hear. And at a time when this sector feels like it's not acknowledged or appreciated, our importance and how people appreciate us are different things. So I want to say thank you for what's important. How we get appreciation for it is something about what I want to talk about in the next 45 minutes. So when I've got energy, if I walk around, am I going to disrupt some kind of recording? Okay. So when Lisa called, she said, or am I? Yes. Okay. So I'm not. Oh boy. Go down again. I'm not trying to walk around. Just gonna. Oh, look at this. Okay. Sorry. Hello. Okay. Is it gonna work? Yes? Okay, even better. All right. Maybe a tad too much coffee. Right? So let me get this set. So when Lisa called me, yes? Can you hear me?
No,
Okay. No?
no.
There's not consensus. Right away, we have a metaphor for our world, right? Hello? Yes, no?
Yes.
Stand back at the podium, not really, I'm hearing. How about this? Okay, why don't I just, I'm cutting into a very limited amount of time I have, so I'm just gonna. Okay. We're in this together, people. So when Lisa called me, she said, here's the 3 things I want you to talk about. I want you to talk about the state of national affairs right now. I want you to talk about like how we mitigate that state. And I want you to talk about if there is a reason to be optimistic, what is the case to be optimistic? And I said, awesome. Do I have a week? Because that's usually what I take to do that kind of curriculum. And she said, no, but you have 45 minutes. I've just used 3 of them fussing with the microphone. So I'm going to be sprinting through a bunch of content just to share my perspectives on all of those things. And I really want, very briefly want to tell you a brief autobiographical note, which is really just designed to tell you where I'm coming from. Not designed to tell you, now we have 2 microphones, which for me is at least one too many. So turn that on. Okay. I want to just share the framework that I'm coming from so you can decide. So 1, you understand that. And 2, you can decide like how you fit it into your worldview, because you know your world better than I do. And I'm not telling you what's true for you. I want to share with you what I do in my work and what I'm sharing to a lot of clients I'm working with now. So right now, there's so much noise. There's a lot of cheap advice. There's a lot of people in the cheap seats. It's never been easier to be in the cheap seats. I don't want to add to the noise. And I want to hopefully share with you that I'm on the field of play. So that's why I just want to briefly talk about my company is called More for Many. Our vision is a world where everyone gives and receives more, right? Where we see that we have a duty to be part of the world by contributing. And when we contribute, we receive more from it. It's a lovely idea. It's amazing that it takes some convincing, but it sometimes takes some convincing to get people to buy into that idea. And in that work, I've probably worked with a couple hundred nonprofits at this point in kind of 2 ends of the spectrum. So either I've worked with people who are trying to launch something new, so that it's very innovative work, it's groundbreaking, there's a lot of ideation, there's a lot of creative energy, right? Really exciting stuff. Or I work with people in turnaround, right? There's drastic distress, and they called me and said, we need to help, we need some perspective finding our way kind of out of the box that we're in. For 20 years, my wife, Jeannie, and I lived in Michigan City, and most of my work was on the road. So I did the drive to O'Hare way too many times, had lots of connections on the coast, all of that stuff. Even as my kids were going to school here in South Bend, and we were living in double time zones and all of that stuff, which was crazy. About a year ago, as our kids got older, we said it's time to kind of be part of a real community. We moved to the South Bend area a year ago. And I'm just sharing that to say, like, I know there's a bunch of, thank you for someone gave me a little clap in the back. No clap for the microphone, but clap for moving to Southwest. I appreciate that. Good to know your audience. So I'm just sharing that to say, like, this is my perspective, right? There's a lot of logos up there that look really impressive. I just want you to know where I'm coming from. I have an office about 2 blocks away in the new Momentum building. Coffee's free. Come and see me. So all of that is to say, this is what I want to share, is what I'm sharing with my clients. And again, like, whether or not it appeals to you, like, you will know better than I. But I hope it's additive to your experience. And as you can see, I have a ton to talk about. And I'm not kidding that this is something, what we're going to try to cover here is something that I usually spend 3 days on. So there is a resource on my website. It is free. Download it. I will not spam you, I promise. It has a handout with a lot more tactical information about what we're going to cover and a much longer presentation, because I'm just going to dance on a few things to hope you give a flavor of what I see is happening in the space, how I'm telling people that I think we can respond, and why I do think there's a case to be optimistic, and frankly, why I think it's the only viable strategy at this point. So that's what we're going to cover. I have a timer. It's going to go off in 30 minutes, and then we're going to be done, and we're going to hear from the panel, which is going to be fascinating. Okay. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Are we in this? Okay. What just happened there? So when I invited participation, the mood in the room went up a notch. So we're going to take it up a couple more notches. I want you to stand up, not a rhetorical question. Stand up, please. Please stand up. Find someone you don't know in this room. So I said the first lesson I want you to take away is thank you. That the level of appreciation we receive isn't always commensurate with the level of need that we address, right? And that unfortunately is part about being in this sector. The second thing I want you to take away is look at what just happened there. What happened to the mood in the room when I said stand up? Did it get higher or lower? Higher, right? What? Well, I'm not sure who you were talking with. Somewhere really went down. What happened to the volume in the room? Did it go up or down?
Up.
Okay. It's so simple, but it's so true. It's so much more engaging when someone like me isn't talking at you, when we're talking with each other. And this is the time we're in, right? When things get difficult, we have to work together. We have to figure out how we do partnerships, even if we don't want to. We have to figure out how we collaborate, even if sometimes we think we're gonna like lose part of our service. This is the time we're in. We're better together. That's the other real thing I want you to take away. Thank you, and we're better together, and we can be done. But I have 20 more minutes. I'm going to take it. Okay, let me just talk about this time. I use the word extraordinary. We can use a whole bunch of different words in there. It's a really difficult time in the space. And one of the things I hear, particularly as I start to work locally and meet people in this area, there's a tendency to think that like it's only affecting some of us. And so I want to share 3 quick, and I'm going to do it really, really quick, stories about my January, which I'm sure was like yours, maybe a little bit different, but all around the same news cycle. So first of all, I got a call mid-January from the executive director of a international relief organization that I worked with a few different times. I was on the board 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And 5 years ago, they came to me and said, and now is it too loud, by the way? Okay. All right. Well, I'm just hearing myself in my head again. Okay. I get thumbs up from the back. Thank you. You are very encouraging and I appreciate it. They called and said, 5 years ago, called and said, we're going to shut down. We need help with a ramp down plan, which is not usually what I do, but it was interesting and I care about the group. And anyway, long story short, through that process, we figured out, no, we have a viable strategy going forward. And we helped get them a $25 million, 5-year, $5 million a year grant from the United States government, from USAID. So she called me in January and said, we're in trouble. And I said, how much? And she said, all of it. And it was all of it. Okay. So this is not a $50,000 a year mental health organization or a $500,000 a year mental health organization. This is a $5 million a year organization. The second story I want to share, which is almost locally, not quite locally, but a group in Central Michigan, 100-year-old group that does mental health support mainly for students. 100 years old, has a $60 million endowment. Think of how many times you say, like, it would be so great if we had an endowment, right? Oh, that would just save everything. They're talking about shutting down because the board doesn't want to keep pulling funds in a deficit mode. Probably need to talk with that board. And she called and said, I think we have to cut like 30% of our staff. The last group I want to mention, I worked with some really large organizations, a very well-known cancer hospital that I think would be known in this area, but this does incredible research. $2 billion organization. $2 billion organization is looking at a $400 million shortfall because of changes to direct and indirect reimbursements. More to get in there. But the point of this is it's happening across the board. And really, that's all I want to share. We could get into policy and in the 15 minutes I have, I don't think it's productive. I just want to say, like, one of the things we need to understand is everyone is being affected. And so that's not to say, like, I guess misery loves company. It's just to say that one of the things we can't afford to do is say, this is just happening to me. This is just happening to my organization. We're all in a really different dynamic. We're all in a really different situation. And it's one of those times, I think this is a slide, right? It feels like we're about to get bowled over. It's one of those times that we know we have to start to do the things that in the good times we think we should do, but we really don't have to do because the times are good. And now it's time to do the thing. We have no choice but to do the things that we've kind of always known have been there, like getting a clear case of support, like being more upfront about how we ask, like making sure we know who's contributing to us. All of those things that in good times we don't have to do, we have to do now. None of that is a way of saying this is okay. I'm not trying to normalize anything. In some settings, I use a different word here, but I'm just meeting you, so I want you to think nicely of me. But like, look, this stinks. It's tough. It's difficult. And that's how it is. And so the first thing I'm saying to clients, whether they're in the sector for a week or they've been in the sector for 40 years, is we got to feel the feels. Like, it's real. You know, it's stress. You all are in a sector where you treat others, and I bet a lot of you have more stress in your life than you want. You have more stress in your life, more despair, more negative thoughts than people you care for. And so we have to be aware of that. I mean, we just have to call it what it is. That doesn't fix it. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't normalize it. But I want to just say, it stinks. That's where we're at. Okay. The other thing I want to share to get to, like, now, how do we address it and why is this relevant to the nonprofit sector is this. Really quickly. How am I doing? Okay, I'm fine. I want to talk about this briefly. So why is there a sector at all? Why do we have a nonprofit sector? There's these two big actors in our space, the government. We talk a lot about the government. We're talking now about changes in government spending and how they're affecting us. The government roughly is about a $7 trillion mover. And when you take out what are called transfers, there's about $3.5 trillion that goes into the economy. So things that we agree as a society that need to be changed, we funnel through government. There's this other actor that is huge in business, much bigger, 3 times bigger, the business sector, the for-profit sector, things that we say we can capitalize, right? That people can make money on. This is how they do it. Like, if I sell you shoes that are fancy, that has a nice brand on it, you'll pay money on it. So these are the two big actors in our world. They're both huge. The things that we agree that we all need to legislate and fund together. And the things that other people say, I can make money on it. And so capital flows in and investors are willing to put money at risk because they get money back. Why is this relevant? There is a gap. There's a gap, right? There's a gap in this. There is about a $500 billion in our little sector. And it's crazy there's a gap. So I want to just acknowledge that. It's crazy that not everyone believes that there should be mental health care for everyone. That kids, no matter what they look like, should be able to read. That, like, you should be educated in the language that you can hear. That that people, regardless of their preferences, should have equal access to healthcare. It's nuts. So I'm not trying to normalize it. It's nuts that we can't agree as a society that that should be universally provided. But it's true. And it's sad but true that people can't make money on it. And so they don't capitalize it with business. The point of this is there is this gap in the world that we think is possible and the world we live in that we can't vote to change and that no one else can get investors to support. And that's what we're here to do. And why is this relevant right now? Because I want to tell you, if you're looking at a shortfall, you haven't failed, right? Like, you haven't failed. The fact that you need to fundraise right now isn't a sign that your model is broken. It's not a sign that nobody cares. It's not a sign that you did something wrong. It's not a sign that we should have voted differently. Maybe we should have, right? It's just a sign that you're in the nonprofit sector. So I know this might not help. And again, I want to like not give cheap advice. I want to be not talking from the sidelines, but a lot of what we're in now is how we pull ourselves out of it is to realize, like, to begin with, we're in a sector that we need to mobilize generosity. That's what we do. And again, I'm not saying it is good or it is bad. I'm just saying it is. So one of the things I want to disavow you of, you came in saying, this is a personal issue, like, wow, I should have run this organization differently. We should have seen this coming. We should have more diversified funding. Like, it's not helpful, right? It's understandable, but it's not helpful. We're in a sector that we have to mobilize the charity of other people, rightly or wrongly. So what do we do now? We have to get busy mobilizing. I mean, that's the quick response. And I'm going through content so quickly, but I hope you can understand why I brought this up now, because the amount of self-criticism I hear from the clients I'm working with is incredibly, it's so loud. It's louder than when you all stood up to meet other people. It's not helping us right now. We're in a sector that we chose because we're in this sector because people won't spend money on this. We're in this sector because the government won't do anything. So what we need to do now is redouble the basics of the sector to be the basics of the dynamics that get us money in the first place. I hope this makes sense. So when people call me and they say we're in crisis, I always ask this question: where do you think the greatest potential for growth is going to come from? And they're like, you're not hearing me. We're in crisis right now. No, let's just talk about growth. Where are we going to, if you're in crisis and you need $1 million, you need $400 million, you need $50,000, whatever the shortfall is, where do you think it's going to come from? And what I always hear is we need to find new supporters, right? We need to get more people to care. And I have I wish we could spend more time on this, but we can't. So I'm just going to cut to the chase. That's not how it works. It's understandable to think that way. But if you called me in and hired me for turnaround, we would do the exact opposite thing. In nature, growth happens from the inside out, right? Things grow from the inside out. Think of the tree. It's the same with us. And so in moments of crisis, we have to start with the center. Really quick case study. This is a real organization that I worked with, very similar in mission and program to what many of you do. Small Utah nonprofit, provides after-school counseling, raises about $400,000 annually, about 300 active people in the database, meaning they have good addresses, they're opening emails. Out of the 313 records, how many are actual donors? Any guesses? 3, 10, 10%. Good guess. How many donors account for half of the giving? Okay, here are the answers. I wish we could play, but we can't. I'm going to just keep going. These are trends I see in almost every organization, whether it's $2 billion or $200,000. About half of the people in the database actually give, and of those, 15, so 5%, account for half of the giving. Half of the giving comes for 5% of the people. So and by the way, you can do, like, here's a map of the donors of this organization. there's 300 little boxes here. You can't really see them because a bunch of them are really, really, really small. And half of them aren't even on here because they didn't donate. And then you can see, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 10 people there. You can see the 15, right? And they're sized by the amount that they gave. This is the first thing I would do. Just like you would in your relationship in a family, like, who are my closest friends? We have to mobilize our closest friends. It's really tempting to think, no, another 1,000 people in this community of 100,000 people will care about us and give us. Maybe it's really expensive. I wish I had more time to make this case and show you. It is so expensive to try to do that. To get another 1,000 people to give you $20, when right now we need 2 more people to give us $2,000 or 10 people to give us $5,000, right? We have to, right now, again, not long-term, but right now we have to focus on our core. We have to know who those people are and we have to mobilize them. Growth happens from the inside out. Almost every organization, this is for for-profits too, by the way. Most businesses are like this, are dependent on a really small group of people. Past giving is one of the biggest predictors of future giving, which is like not very helpful as an analyst, but it's true. Donors give because they're asked. This is one of the most researched topics in philanthropy. People give because they are asked to give. They don't get it. Remember the 2 big circles that we looked at. We could say that people are bad or people don't care. Most of them just don't understand that there is this gap in the middle. That's why I put that graph up. And acquisition is always more expensive than you think it's going to be. It's there's so many huge organizations have burnt away so many donor dollars that could have gone to the program by doing acquisition. It's not to say that you shouldn't do it at some point. It's not where I'd start right now. That's what I'm trying to say. So in other words, you know the key people and partners who can help you get back on your feet. This is the framework that we use starting at the middle. This in a lot more detail is on that download, walking step by step. I would start with your largest donors, then people who donate often in small amounts, then one-time donors, then people who know donors, then maybe go to granting. As you can imagine, foundations are being flooded with proposals, irrelevant proposals, and a lot of times. And know that as you get further away from the center, it takes more time, costs more money. So it's not about, at some point, yes, let's get everyone to care. But remember, we're in a space because people don't get it in the first place. So what do we do now in times of crisis? Who are our closest friends? Who are our biggest donors? Who are our biggest supporters? I think I have a little more time. I think I have 10 minutes, right? Okay, I can do this in 10 minutes. Thank you for dealing with a lot of caffeine, and I'm sprinting, and I hope you can see I care. And I wish I had time to make this case, so I'm just going to say, trust me on this. Even though you just met me, and again, there's a lot more documentation on this on our website, and happy to do a longer presentation about this, by the way, if people want to know, like, just how do we triage, because that's what we're in right now, rapid response triage. Okay, this leads us to how to ask. Many of you have probably heard this lecture before. Many of you might have CFREs or you've had other consultants come in and talk about this. I just want to really quickly say, I want to give you my 2 cents on how we demystify the ask, right? Particularly right now, because we all have to ask. Remember, we have a space because people don't get it in the first place. Remember that. Don't assume people understand why your mission matters. This is a huge impediment to growth and a huge opportunity. We have to explain to people. So when I asked the next question, so I said one question was, okay, who do you think is going to fund growth? And I usually hear new people. And I say, no, you know the people. And then I say, what's the story we're telling about why support is needed? Funding cuts. No, not funding cuts. First of all, everyone is using funding cuts right now. We're surrounded again. It's like COVID. Now more than ever, we need to, no. Remember, people don't understand in the first place why there's this space. My alarm's going off saying, dude, you got to hurry this up. Okay. So funding cuts doesn't really work. When it does work, it's like vacuuming loose change off the couch, right? Our funding's been cut. Okay, well, here's your $50 does not do it, right? It doesn't. And we have to be the ones saying that. We have to be out talking louder. It stinks. I want to go back to that. Is it fair? Probably not, but it is what is right now. Okay. So we need to be willing to be talking louder all the time. Really quick quote. There's a guy named Scott Galloway who is an internet commentator. Not probably everyone's cup of tea, but I love this little tidbit from him. This basically says, Google has an algorithm that knows what you want and what you're looking for at every moment in time. And they still have thousands of salespeople. They still have to sell Google. And in the same way, asking, it's not a feature, it's a flaw. It's not a flaw, it's a feature. Okay. It's tempting to think that asking, the need to ask, is some weird peculiarity of the nonprofit space. First of all, it's not. Everyone has to ask. Second of all, let's acknowledge it's humbling. It feels personal. It's hard to sit across from someone who you know has 20, 30, 50 times the wealth of you personally and say, I need your $1,000 or whatever it is. But it's also fulfilling. It can also be inspiring. It can also be amazingly enriching to help people see the power of giving, to see what they receive. And that's the place that we need to be in. Like everything else, it gets better with practice. So here's how I want to demystify the ask for you. The need you're trying to address, not a lack of something. The need you're trying to address, it's different. Why it's important, what you're doing about it. A question of the donor, will you help? Stop talking. So many great asks get ruined by 4 and 5, by bad punctuation, right? A question ends with a question mark. Will you support us with a gift of $50,000? Is really different than, well, and whatever you can do is fine. And I know you just take your time, you just look at the material and get back to me. And I think, right? And we word vomit all over our own ask. So number 4, an ask has a question mark at the end, and then stop talking. Why are you uncomfortable? Why are you uncomfortable? Seriously, this is like, I get fired up about it. Why am I uncomfortable that I'm asking you to help for the mental health of people that no one else will take care of? Why am I humiliated by that? You should be humiliated by that. It should be humiliating that I have to sit here and ask you for support, right? This is the passion we need right now. This is it. I wish we weren't in this spot. Like, I wish we could send a bunch of digital campaigns and everyone clicks text to give, but it's not where we're at. Funding is being cut all over the place. So we have to be louder out there. We don't necessarily have to be indignant the way I'm getting, but we have to be willing to ask. Here's an example. The little question ends with a question mark. Lisa, I swear I'm going to finish on time. I'm sprinting, but I'm going to do it. I just had one of the great things about living in this community is to help be part of the community. So I just had a chance to do the strategic planning for the Elkhart Humane Society. Like, what a group. I mean, what a lovely group. So this is language that I helped them come up with in this exact kind of training. Every month, right here in Elkhart County, over 400 dogs and cats, lovable and deserving of love, are abandoned. Did you know that, by the way? Speak about that gap in the middle. Like, this is the world that we live in. That's not the world I want to live in. Are you kidding me? 400 animals a month? That's ridiculous to me. Anyway, besides the massive cost of the animals themselves, this impacts every person in the county too, because we know homes with pets are safer, less likely to be abusive, and more likely to create families where kids stay in school. That's all true, by the way. The Humane Society of Elkhart County, a private, local, independent cornerstone in the county, provides no-kill care, rehabilitation, and subsidized clinic visits to put animals in homes and keep people together. Will you support us? So look at what we did there, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to memorize this. You don't have to have it all choreographed out, but like what we do, why it matters, how there's impact, not our funding, we're downstream from, city and state and federal agencies, and our funding is going to get cut, which is also true, by the way. But that doesn't motivate people. They don't realize there needs to be a sector in the first place. So look, there's a need. You may walk past it every day of the week. That's okay. That makes you human. But I'm here to tell you there is a need that's worth seeing. And I'm here to tell you that your part will make a difference in it, right? If everyone gave, I wouldn't be asking, but not everyone gives. That's a whole different presentation. The numbers are really shocking, by the way. When you really look at it, it's shocking. So, need, why, what, question. This is your tool set. The people who you already know, your ability to overcome our own emotional inertia and get out, and being able to ask over and over and over. This is what it is. I wish there was this, I'm not sure this is what you wanted, Lisa, but I wish I had this large policy answer for you. And I know people smarter than us are working on that, maybe some people in this room. But what I'm working on is just getting on the ground. We got to be out loud, proud. We got to be talking to a world that in good times doesn't always get that we're here. And in bad times certainly needs to be reminded. Really quickly, super quick, why 500? Why is that the right number? It's not. I'll just answer my own question. We don't know, right? We would do the analysis. We would look, and by analysis, I don't mean that to sound scary. Just look at your past donors. If someone gave you 5,000, ask for 5,000. If someone gave you 50, ask for 100. But so the number changes. There's no right number. The number changes based on the person and their ability. Really quickly, great ask, personal, passionate, polite, persistent, make it real. Why do you work here? Honestly, is it for the great pay? Is it for the incredible speakers on a Thursday morning? Probably not. Your passion is your greatest asset. Be passionate. I'd so much rather have people say, wow, I can't believe how emotional he got, than someone say like, oh, I kind of remember. I don't know, he wasn't so into it. Polite and persistent go together. Like sometimes people can't give, we don't know what someone else is going through, right? You know that through your work. So I don't mean to sound like everyone is uncharitable or people aren't generous. I think actually everyone wants to be generous. They just don't know how to get there. It hasn't been modeled for them. For so many people grew up in a home where they never saw it. So polite means we understand sometimes people can't give and it's not about us and it's okay. And persistent, politely persistent. If someone says, follow up with me in a year, follow up in a year, right? They won't, don't expect that they'll remember. Okay, what's next? Here's my case for optimism. I want to talk briefly about one of my favorite and least favorite words, which is resilience. In times like this, resilience starts coming out from people like me. And resilience, I've grown to believe, is a word that people not in the nonprofit sector share with people in the nonprofit sector to tell us to work harder. I don't believe in resilience, okay? Resilience is usually code for stiff upper lip, stiffen your back, work overtime. Resilience actually means flexibility, pliability, right? Adaptability. And I think we are being called to that. We're being called to see like, it's not how we wanted it to be, but this is how it is. So it's understandable to be frustrated, discouraged. It's understandable to be angry as we look at the people we're serving and need help. It's understandable to feel lost, but none of those things actually help us going forward. Feel all the feels, but particularly for those of you in leadership positions, right? I'm not saying push it down, I'm not saying ignore it. Feel what is real, but then check out with the people around you, whether anger, frustration, discouragement is helping them. The tagline that I adopted for More for Many is believe in better. It doesn't mean ignore what's here, right? It means we have to be the people out front leading and saying it could be better. Right? It doesn't have to be like this. And I think more than anything, this is my case for optimism right now, is that there's people like you who will sit in this room on a Thursday morning and listen to someone they've never met and consider it and try it on for size, right? And say like, maybe there is a way this world could be better. We can be frustrated, we can be discouraged, but we have to use that for something. Last thing I want to share, Pema Children. This is from a book, Uncomfortable with Uncertainty. Pema Children, if you don't know, I mean, Comfortable with Uncertainty. Don't listen to me, just go pick up that book and read it. It's amazing. Pema Children is a Buddhist teacher, writer, monk, thought partner. And I've been ending with this because I love this message. I think it's really important right now. Going back to believe in better. It doesn't mean we ignore what is. It means we work to something that's more powerful than what we have now. This quote is, spiritual awakening is frequently described as a journey to the top of the mountain. At the peak, we've transcended all pain. The only problem with this metaphor is that we leave all others behind. Their suffering continues. The path goes down, not up, as if the mountain pointed toward the earth instead of the sky. Instead of transcending the suffering of all creatures, we move towards turbulence and doubt however we can. This has been my inspiring, like, lighthouse. We got to move towards doubt and turbulence right now. Why? Because a lot of people in good times don't even know that it's there to begin with. So in bad times, we have to be the ones out front, talking a little louder, being prouder of our work, right? Asking for support. None of this like instantly fills the 30% budget hole that you have. But like, we got to be out and acting. And so like, you must, right? We have to find the courage to be optimistic. I think it's the only strategy. To me, it's the only strategy. And again, there's other people in other pay grades working on policy, working on changes to leadership, all of those things. But for us on the ground, like I will survive. This work will continue. We will grow. That will be our testament. That we look back here and say, that was difficult. We did it. We grew in the process, right? If not that, then like, why are we all here? So you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was additive and not a lecture. And I hope if there's any way I can help, I hope you'll call on me. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world and most of all, the work that you do with the people around you. I appreciate you.
So while I'm pulling out the slides, Jeff, can you maybe if there's one
Yeah,
question while I'm doing that? So if anybody can shout out their question, that would be great. And that's Velshan and first.
I want to say thank you, Hannah, for introducing us to this wonderful gentleman. Thank you for having such flourishing slides while you're sharing with us something that can be so scary. My question is, if I have a board that is constantly saying, I am so nervous to ask for people to fund this because I'm on your board. You know, it's like this mindset of, well, maybe they just think I'm being impartial about this being good work almost, and I'm asking a favor. I've had people tell me, like, help me get out of my own fear, but I don't really know how to help other people get out of their fear.
What a great quote. First of all, thank you. Great point. And I would say this question is one of the questions I'm getting most to like get my board off the sidelines. A couple quick things. First of all, we lead by example. So you getting out there, I think you got to get out there. Second, a real easy thing is ask board members to go with you. I mean, there's more direct ways, but I would say like, look, I would like a board member on every major ask that I do. And just show them, don't tell them. There's a lot of structural things that I would recommend and that are harder to get to sometimes, but like the board has to know when they come on, there has to be a give get. There just has to be. And so, and I mean, huge organizations don't have that. Where people are like, well, you know, I donate my time. Like you harping at me and giving me your advice 4 times a year from Zoom, that doesn't really help. So like, that is why I think one of the toughest jobs of the leadership, the CEO or the executive director right now is to go to the board chair and say, I imagine something different. But it starts with that. It starts by leading by example and then saying like, look, here's what I imagine 3 years from now. We have an active board that has all the professional competency we have now and is out engaging in the community, helping amplify my staff, helping multiply my work. So this is a really tough conversation, but that you brought it up is step one. And I encourage all of you who are at the top, like, we got to change, just like nobody knows why there's a sector to begin with. Most of these board members, speaking in this phone safety, this has never been modeled to them. It's never been modeled to them. And now I'm taking too much time, but like when I do deeper fundraising analysis, you got a little taste of like the dorky side of me. I'll see you, I'll look at the board. And it's incredible. Like huge organizations, people with a lot of money who are giving $50 a year. Come on. So some basic policies and saying it's best practices in the space that board members contribute their time and they contribute their finances. And it's not an either or. Money makes the mission go. So, and hopefully people like me can help you, you know, carry that message. But I love the question. It's one of the quickest points. It's one of the quickest leverage points right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, so much. What we will also do is send a link to what you shared, because it really is a very useful handout and look at it, and it's good for all of the organization.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, so we had an opportunity that Ham had an opportunity this past summer to collaborate with the Eck Institute for Global Health on a survey that we distributed to nonprofits in the area. And so I'm going to share the results from that survey, probably not do a whole lot of analysis of it, but I think it'll lead in nicely to the panel that we have following here. So I'm going to do a quick run through. This will not be the last time that you see the survey, the results. So special thank you to our friends at the Eck Institute, Nydia, Gabriella, and Marianne. Thank you so much for the time that you put into helping with putting the survey together and compiling the results. So the reason that we did this survey was to try and take the temperature of nonprofits in the community, particularly in preparation for the summit. Because we want to know, you know, as Jeff said, we all feel like we're in this together. And I think what you're going to see is that we all share the same concerns. So in terms of who completed the survey, I can't really see these slides very well, even with my fingers. We had about 40% from community-based organizations. We had governmental organizations who completed it, healthcare providers, mental health providers, school-based programs, and I think that 3% is a daycare that completed the survey. So we had a variety of organizations who completed the survey. And as far as how long they've been in operation, 75% of the organizations have been around for longer than 10 years. And then you can see a smaller percentage for the 6 to 10 years, 2 to 5 years, and less than 2 years. The part-time, we had a fair number, 28% who have over 100 employees, 25% who have 1 to 5 employees, 6 to 20 employees, about 28%, and the remainder somewhere between 21 and 100. So we had a nice variety in terms of size of organization respond. And then where these organizations were based, you can see that 66% were from St. Joseph County, 53% from Elkhart, 13% from Marshall. And we had organizations who weren't in our immediate area who also responded to the survey because they were interested. In terms of areas served, so you have organizations like ours who cross county lines. And so you can see here that 81% of the organizations serve St. Joseph County, 77% serve Elkhart, 42% serve Marshall County. In terms of age groups served, it's all the ages. So these organizations reflect, all of the needs in the community, the ages in the community. And interestingly, 70% said they provide services in a language other than English. Most of that was Spanish language, although we had a few others who had ASL, American Sign Language, as one of their language capacities. As far as it relates to mental health, and when we sent out the survey, we sent it to every nonprofit that we knew of. We got about a 50% return rate. So I think we sent it out to about 65 organizations and 34 responded. We wanted to make sure that we had decision makers who were able to kind of give us a little bit more insight. And so we had about 50% of respond who were decision makers, and they were mental health and beyond in terms of organizations. So in terms of what these organizations do in relation to mental health, more than half are direct providers of mental health services. 78% said they make referrals for mental health. 34% embed mental health services in their programming. 41% provide informal or peer-based support. And then we have another category for how it relates to mental health. This is a lot going on here, but in terms of types of mental health services, you can see that individual therapy, group therapy, and this last one is a little bit harder. I can't actually see that one. This is how terrible my eyes are. Probably somebody else can read that, 57%.
Mental health prevention for education.
Oh, thank you so much. So more than half the group is doing some sort of education or prevention. 40% doing peer support. So you get a sense of, there's a lot of different approaches to providing mental health services, a lot of context for these organizations. So we asked the group, which external uncertainties are currently causing the most concern or pressure for your team? And not surprisingly, 86% said potential changes to state or federal public policy were causing stress. The political climate itself, 83%, shifts in public funding streams, about 76%, and shifts in private funding streams, about 55%. Insurance, you can read the rest of them down there. So what's happening on the federal level, on the state level, and with policy and with funding, we're all carrying that stress with us. This is an even busier slide. We asked our directors to identify stressors or workforce challenges prior to January 2025. And then since 2025, how those may have shifted, and then what we're anticipating for the next 12 to 18 months. So you can see that for funding constraints, right? That is, the biggest category that people are concerned about as a challenge for organizations. And so you can see that line, right, is just, getting worse in terms of funding as a concern for people. The middle line is client wait lists, which, in some ways is intuitive. If we are facing cuts, you're going to have people looking for services because you're going to have less services available and longer waits. And then policy and regulation barriers, those are also increasingly concerning. And some of that has started to trickle, and I think we're concerned about additional barriers. So everything else, is somewhat staff retention, is less of a concern, but I think it's mostly because we're all worried about funding, and how that's going to impact our service delivery. Looking ahead to the end of the calendar year, how likely is it that the issues that you selected above, so think about that previous, will have a significant impact on your organization's operations? 29% of the leaders said very likely, 46% said somewhat likely. And then interestingly, 18% that it wasn't very likely to have an impact, and 7% weren't sure. So we're anticipating that there is going to be some impact on our ability to serve the community. How confident are you in your organization's ability to meet anticipated community needs over the next 12 to 18 months? Just about half felt very confident, and just about half felt somewhat confident. So when I think about optimism, like that's actually a really optimistic statement for people to feel like we are facing cuts, but we actually are still pretty confident that we're going to be able to meet the community need. How would you describe your team's overall morale? Given the recent changes, we can see that 14% are very positive, 31% somewhat positive, 31% mixed or neutral, 17% somewhat negative, and 7% very negative. So now we're looking at, what is the effect on, people's mood in the organization. And there, as Jeff, reiterated, there are things that we need to be concerned about, and that's happening right now that are quite disturbing. So having positive morale, I think this makes sense to me that people have is a mixture of how people are doing. We asked our survey respondents what positions they thought were most at risk for reduction or elimination. And the most frequently responded were direct care positions. So if people lose funding, we can anticipate there will be less people served in the community, but it's across the board. Administration and management positions, support staff, education outreach, everything is at risk in terms of if we lose funding or as we lose funding. And some of these things, we don't think maybe so much about the administrative or support staff and how valuable that is, but it frees up people to do the fundraising, right? So, or to do the direct care. So if you have support staff, the functioning of the organization improves. So not having that, there is a ripple effect as well. So existing collaborations. So we wanted to try and get a sense of how are people feeling about collaborations. Anna is going to go into much greater detail on collaborations, but here's what our respondents said. So 86% said that they are partnering with other mental health or community-based organizations. That's a fantastic number. Would your organization be interested in broader partnerships? 79% yes, said yes. So we have a mood in this community of wanting to work together. So here, again, a lot of information here, but in which of the following areas would additional support or partnerships be most helpful to your organization? You can see that policy and advocacy support is the greatest need that organizations identified, followed by community outreach and engagement, referral network development, staff training, and helping navigating funding opportunities and applications. And there's other, others that are not far behind from there. The right side is what could your organization contribute? And interestingly, there's staff training and continuing education, 59% of the organization said they could do that. And 45% said program development, 66% said community outreach and engagement, and referral network development. So these are pointing toward opportunities for organizations to partner together. And I won't say more on that because I think Anna's going to kind of take advantage of that information. In the past year, has your organization taken steps to build partnerships? 71% said that they have been successful. in building successful partnerships or referral networks. And you can see that the others, there's a small number who found that they couldn't, build partnerships. 21% said that they encountered significant challenges. But I look at this and I see again that spirit of collaboration is there. If you're experienced challenges, what were the challenges? And 44%, it's limited time or staffing capacity. So building partnerships, building trust takes time. And if you want to do it well and do it right, and sometimes we just don't have that capacity. So let's see here. So this is it for the slide presentation. We are going to figure out kind of what we do to leverage the information here. I do think that, the take home is that for as diverse a group of people who respond to this, there certainly were themes that seem to resonate with all of the organizations. So, I'm going to probably leave it at that. What we're leading into right now is a panel of nonprofit leaders, and Elizabeth Benyon is moderating the panel. So I'm going to ask them to come up, and I anticipate some of these things are going to get fleshed out a little bit more. But I'm going to welcome Elizabeth Benyon to come up, Juan, Stephanie, KJ, Benita. Come on up and take a seat at the table. And Elizabeth, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I am delighted to be here today to moderate this panel. We are going to talk now about what's happening here on the ground locally. We saw a survey with what people are thinking about, what they're concerned about, and what is happening with local organizations, but now we want to get more detail from a few of these organizations. We're going to start by having each of our guests introduce themselves. So I'd like you to talk just briefly about, tell us who you are, tell us a little bit about your organization and its mission, and also some key programs that you run. And then if you could, give us a sense of the number of people that you reach and what kind of folks in the community really are your target audience, and how access to mental health care might affect the clients and constituents that you serve. So we will start with KJ.
All right. I'm gonna go back and forth on those cheaters too, Lisa, so, and I'm new to them, so excuse my fumbling. I am KJ Mapes. I'm the president and CEO of Real Services. We are both an area agency on aging and a community action, which are mandated roles through federal acts that then come through state units on aging. Our mission is around independence, dignity, and strength. We serve older adults, people living with dementia and their caregivers, families experiencing financial instability, and it's across northern Indiana. So we serve 5 counties. We swap out a county between the community action agency and the area agency on aging. Overall, we serve about 30,000 people a year across roughly 25 to 30 programs. We're very diverse in that regard. Sometimes thinking of some of the things Jeff said, it's hard to create a single case for your services and you say, well, which one? Because we serve so many. So we are very diverse. Some of our key programs, most people know us for Meals on Wheels. We do a ton of meals every week. Close to 1,000 meals go out of our kitchen for both home delivered meals and congregate meals. Senior transportation, we have a number of care management programs that we actually serve from age 0 to death across care management programs. Our community action program is one of our larger ones. It's energy assistance season. And so we serve about 8,000 people just in energy assistance, weatherization, family development, financial literacy. Another part of our division is Alzheimer's Dementia Services of Northern Indiana and our Portage Commons Senior Enrichment Center. The last question, say the last question about mental health.
How access to mental health care services affects your target clientele?
Yeah, well, and I specifically think about our folks that are caregivers or persons living with dementia, and then of course our families experiencing financial instability. And we're in a safe group, so we're not supposed to say poor or low income anymore. I'm going to use those words today because it's hard to say people experiencing financial instability a lot. So I think for us, our largest group is our folks that are low income, who are living in poverty, experiencing poverty on a daily basis, particularly with the changes to Medicaid. I get very concerned about their access to mental health, but also the stigma around it that is very challenging sometimes to address. And then I think probably a group that we don't think about very often is our caregivers and people living with dementia and the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And just getting to the doctor is hard. So having conversations about mental health are even harder.
Thank you. Juan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Constantino. I work at La Casa de Amistad as its CEO. And La Casa de Amistad has been in this community since 1973, founded as a youth and community center to do outreach to Latino and migrant farm worker youth. And today, as of 4 years ago, now is in a new facility on the south side of town. The organization's mission, as it goes, is to support and empower Latino, Hispanic, and immigrant community throughout the entire region with educational programs, social services, and advocacy support. How does that break down? We've got educational programs. That means preschool, K-12, adult education, legal support and social services, and all in all, 18 different programs. Impact-wise, it's about at least 12,000 visits physically into the center, and that could be a number of different things. A little over 30,000 phone calls annually that come in with our social services and welcome desk. And then it really sprawls from there in terms of registered programs. And then the impact of mental health. Well, I think mental health is something that impacts all of us, but particularly with our center that has an immigration legal clinic, by and large supports an immigrant community. And of that immigrant community, an undocumented immigrant community that are faced with a lot of fears. There's a lot of anxiety, there's growing depression, and there's deep trauma. And so being able to navigate that and simply asking for access in folks' language is a big component of what we're doing, what we're looking to navigate, and why we appreciate the partnership in the panel today.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Murphy. I'm the Executive Director here at the St. Joe County Public Library, where our mission is to connect people of our diverse community to information, resources, culture, and each other. So we take pride in that. We serve about 60,000 people each month who come through our doors across our 10 locations. And that's everybody from every walk of life. When it comes to mental health, and unlike maybe public perception, we see this across our locations, not just our downtown facility. We see a number of people who are unsheltered, people with mental health crisis, and we're often the first stop for those people. And last year we hired a social worker who's been doing an amazing job of helping our staff become more. And then she is often that first point of contact for people to connect them to some of these other great resources. Unlike the other panelists, we are not a 501c3. We are a governmental unit, which means we're taxpayer funded, which of course right now comes with its own challenges.
Thank you. And Bonita.
I am Bonita Shuck. I am the Chief Clinical Officer at Oaklawn Psychiatric Center. I'm a social worker by training, having worked at Oaklawn for 33 years. In that time, obviously, there's been a lot of change in terms of services, how we do things, and even our locations. So I would say right now, we have a full continuum of care that operates from prevention and education to traditional outpatient therapies of groups and families and individuals to more crisis-oriented care in our crisis centers, our mobile crisis units, to a lot of outreach that we do that's beyond kind of our walls, to inpatient facilities and residential facilities where people actually live in housing with us. So, so that's kind of the breadth of the kinds of things that we do. In all of those spaces, people are accessing care. We have probably about 16,000 clients who have full clinical services happening. We have another several thousand who we're in outreach kinds of situations with, trying to move them into services, and probably a few thousand more who benefit from training and consultation kinds of services that we have.
Thank you. And I think I was invited as moderator of this panel because I have two primary hats. One is as a political scientist at IU South Bend, and the other as director of community engagement. So we're going to turn to a little bit to that political science side, which is to talk about public policy and how it's affecting your organizations. We saw in the survey results that 86% of the nonprofits who responded suggested that potential changes to state and federal policy were a source of pressure and stress right now. We also saw, of course, funding constraints being that other biggest concern that people report. Both funding constraints and policy changes were those top two items when we talk about workforce challenges. So I wanted to ask you all about how policy shifts have affected your budget and your ability to achieve your programming goals. And if recent federal funding cuts haven't affected you directly, what state policy changes coming down the pipeline that we know some major changes with the property tax cuts, for example, will be phased in. What sort of state and local policy changes do you have an eye on and are you concerned about right now? And maybe we'll start on the other end of the table with Bonita.
Well, you know, we all came out of the pandemic with this greater societal awareness and I think willingness to address mental health concerns. And there were some initial kinds of initiatives to move in the direction of what we're now calling CCBHCs, or Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinics. And that was going to kind of redefine how we do mental health care in the United States. And Indiana was one of those states that was moving in that direction. And so a year ago in Senate Bill 1, not the Senate Bill 1 about the property tax, which is the most recent one, but the Senate Bill 1 before that was one that said, we're going to designate money for these certified community behavioral health clinics. And we are going to get on board with this whole plan, and we are going to, it's going to be a better day in mental health services. So of course, we were pretty excited about all that. That looks good. We all need that. We all know here in this room, we need more resources there. And so it was a good day, and it's been a number of good months. But on the other hand, right now, we are experiencing some concerns that have to do, frankly, with Medicaid funding. So I think most of you here are very aware of the threat to Medicaid in a variety of ways. I mean, some of it has to do with not only is the federal government saying we're going to redetermine Medicaid every 6 months, the state of Indiana is saying we're going to redetermine Medicaid every 90 days. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't figure out my insurance every 90 days. I'm gonna have to do that. And so to think that people are going to be able to do this is concerning for sure. And there's going to be a lot of requirements around it, and those requirements are likely to be confusing. and maybe a little rigid, and more people will fall off. In addition, in Indiana, we're looking at proposed caps on the number of people who can receive Medicaid in a particular year. And so without the ability to draw down the Medicaid, like this, the CCBHC process was developed on, it's going to be really hard to make that model work. In addition, and you've been hearing it, the availability of marketplace plans to pay for services. And let's just say, I don't know, our insurance went way up this year. I don't know about all of yours, but those kinds of things, making healthcare more difficult to access is going to be a thing that's going to continue for us. Obviously, that's one thing that we have concern about. I'll just briefly name two others. One is housing area. I am not as much expert as some of you sitting here in the housing space, but I will say emergency housing vouchers have been reduced. This is money from a mental health block grant. There are changed requirements that require treatment before housing. We had just gotten to the point where we were saying we need to house people first, get that stress off their backs so that they can then engage in treatment. And now we're saying, the government's saying, no, they have to go to treatment and earn their way into housing. This is going to be problematic and seems like a turn in a direction maybe we don't want to go. The other thing is just grants in general, and probably other people will talk about those more, but I do have to say this quote, which I found very interesting. We've been told that changes to HHS grants include more rules about when and how you can request changes, and that HHS has the right to terminate awards for its own convenience with no appeal rights available. So that feels like a pretty astounding kind of comment. And clearly we have grants, as I'm sure others here do.
Thank you. And so we think so often of Oaklawn as this direct mental health provider. And I think sometimes the ways that the state and the federal government affect what you're able to do and how you're able to serve our community and region becomes invisible, but here are these really tangible ways that public policy will affect the work that you're able to do and what people in our community will be able to access in terms of their mental health care, housing, and other things needed to have a decent life. Thank you so much. Lisa.
So I wanted to start by just addressing like underlying rhetoric for the changes that we're seeing with policy. So when we hear about waste, fraud, and abuse, and we have this general disdain for public servants, and then we also talk about property taxes theft, right? All of this is underlying the problems that we're seeing at the federal level and the national level, when in fact, we as community members receive so much for our property tax dollars, and it's not just us here at the libraries. It is the schools, it is the cities, and I don't like to pay my property taxes any more than anybody else, not any more than I like to pay my mortgage, right? But we get something for that. We get everything from snow plowing to our mental health services, everything that Real Services does, all those federal grants that trickle down that are being stopped. It is all around this rhetoric that it's waste, but it's not. Can we find some? Sure. Can we tighten our belts in some places as governmental means? Sure. But by and large, what we receive for our tax dollars is a really good return on investment. And as Jeff was talking about earlier, we need to fill these gaps. What kind of community do we want to live in? I want to live in a community that funds mental health services. So I wanted to start just by framing the conversation around this rhetoric that we're seeing to push back on that rhetoric. For us, we don't get a lot of federal funding, occasional grant here or there, but the changes to the property tax structure here in the state of Indiana is really pretty drastic for, really a benefit if you have a $300,000 home, so you're not impoverished. You might save $300. It's not significant to those families, but it is significant to all of the local units, including schools, cities, townships, which do a lot of work for people who are experiencing financial difficulties, and to the library. So we're not sure of the impact. We know we'll receive about $1 million less next year than we've received this year. And then our primary concern is for 2028, where the local income tax structure is changed. And we'll have to petition the county for our local income tax dollars. We receive about 2.3 million. If we don't get that money, we'll really start discounting.
It's okay.
So there's a lot up in the air still.
Thank you so much. Stephanie, one.
On the public policy side, particularly for La Casa Amistad, we're looking at the impacts to immigration policies, which are federally, but also impact us locally and statewide. So thinking of the motto of like think globally, in this case statewide, but then act locally. There's been an immense infusion in the federal government of $170 billion for immigration, customs enforcement, and about 10 billion of it is unrestricted for any other effort. So how that's going to be infused across the country into state governments that want to opt in is an immense concern. About 3 weeks ago, the naturalization exam changed and will take full effect Monday, October 20th. Folks that have been studying and have been in the process of becoming U.S. naturalized citizens and had an exam that was 100 questions and you got interviewed by 10 and you passed 6. Is now going up to 128 questions. So we're adding more. We're upping the ante on going up to 20 questions asked during the naturalization exam, and it would only get harder and changing the dynamics. And then, of course, here in the state of Indiana, we're looking at things such as the investment of the state on a detention center and by Miami Correctional Facility by the Grissom Airport, and the state of Indiana appropriating $15.7 million to create 1,000 beds to detain immigrants in our community. And then subsection 287G of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which ultimately deputizes local law enforcement to collaborate with immigration customs enforcement and federal law enforcement. In the state of Indiana, we have 4 counties that have opted in. The governor's office wants to also opt in, the state police. And so that is all immense concerns. How does public policy also impact La Casa de Amistad and or operations? I think the public policies are changing how we're approaching our work. It's changing the dynamics of the work we do and how we do it. It's quite literally changing an entire curriculum to a citizenship exam. It's forcing our immigration legal clinic to pivot and to try to absorb more cases. We're already up 25% more cases and consults filed than all of last year, 3 quarters into the year. And for organizations in the room, as you know, any operational move becomes a financial move. And so ultimately what's happening is these moves that are changing our operations are having financial impacts on La Casa Amistad. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, you know, we need to mobilize generosity. That's just the nature of our work. And if there's no money, there's no mission. And if everything's important, nothing's important. And it's really hard as CEOs, as executive directors, as leaders in the room to create line items of priority. But at the end of the day, everything's important, nothing's important. And if you have no money, you have no mission. And so there couldn't be a bigger emphasis on outreaching to the folks that we have within our base, expanding that, but keeping the mission alive, of the organization, and sustaining it long term.
Thank you. Hey, Jane.
I'm glad my other panelists got a little passionate because I was worried I was going to go over the top on this, but and then I thought that be positive. I'm like, oh, I'm sure I can. So I'm glad you guys came out swinging. So that means I can as well. So I'm going to start at the federal level. Oh, I don't know. Maybe people should do their job and pass a flipping budget. That would be great. Let's start there. Just saying. And there seems to be a real mentality of let's hurt the most vulnerable and make it their fault. And this is where I get a little fired up. It's like, we need to stop, or maybe we need to speak louder and start saying to people that are making policy, having a need is not a failure. It's not a fault. It's not a flaw, and it's not laziness. And it's certainly not a the fault of the person experiencing need. We need to be yelling that from the rooftops. I think about, sometimes as I sit and worry about my stuff, and Juan's office is not too far from mine, and I think, oh, I don't know if I could go through everything Juan and his folks and who he's serving is going through right now. So I think we need to continue to both look inward and outward because we're all dealing with this, as Jeff said. So at the federal level, we went through a period of time at the beginning of the year where they, zeroed out 2 of our major programs. All of community action was zeroed out of the original budget. All of energy assistance was zeroed out of the original budget, which is under LIHEAP. We had a number of other programs that were zeroed out that specifically are ones that deal with healthcare and people getting healthier and staying healthier, our evidence-based programs. So going through that, we did have some extreme advocacy that definitely helped us. We're not out of the ballpark yet, or we're not out of danger yet, as those things are now back in the budget, but we don't know where they'll be. We're governed by 2 federal acts, the Community Services Block Grant and the Older Americans Act, neither of which have been reauthorized and need to be because it has to be authorized and then appropriated and then allocated and then awarded. So we're missing some steps in that process. Looking at the state level, pathways, collective grown. It's been a failure. I'm going to say that in this room. I see Ed going, yeah. It has taken, it's a policy failure in that families lost their local advocates. They lost their local connection to people that see them as neighbors and people who need support. Services are delayed and denied. Caregivers are feeling overwhelmed because now we have, a more complicated system, losing Medicaid for no apparent reason other than the system doesn't work. And then providers are left holding the bag a lot of times. At one point, our accounts receivable for different programs was more than $2 million. We were waiting for someone to pay us. We don't pay our providers until we're paid. So they're holding the bag for that. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. There's currently an RFP. They want to go from having 3 providers to having 1. None of the 3 are doing a good job. So who do you pick? Sorry, no, I'm not positive. I'm trying. One of the things at the state level, there's a movement at the state to consolidate contracts. Again, it's this, I feel like this real fault game that's being played at the policy level, that it's not our fault that the food up, waste, fraud, and abuse you mentioned. It's someone else's fault. And I'm feeling that at the policy level and things like, well, there's just too many contracts and there's too many of you and you don't all do the same work and you do it differently. So it's your fault. So we don't want to have 16 area agencies on aging that serve their local community, are in their local community and have been there since 1966. We want to have 1 for the whole state because more bureaucracy is better. And we know that's not true. And so that is a risk we are facing. There is a study that is going to be done to determine how we should draw the lines for area agencies on aging. And that destabilizes our funding. It makes it so there's not local connections. An example of this is recently when they moved APS to a single provider. By the way, that provider is out of state. That's not helpful. State is consolidating those contracts. We're seeing it in different things. We're seeing flat funding and just we're experiencing the chaos, but so are these workers at the state and federal level. And I don't want to put blame on them because it's the policy and the policy makers, not the poor person who has to learn a new job because they laid off 6 or 8 people in their department because they said they were inefficient. So we see that in our systems that don't work, in our people that don't know how to do the things we've been doing. We see it in delayed payments, and all of that is going to continue to put pressure on not only us as organizations, at those state units as well. And so from a policy standpoint, they're caught in the middle just like we are. And I think sometimes I have to remind myself of that when I get on the phone with them and say, please, you need to fix this.
Yeah, it's very interesting that the survey revealed policy and advocacy support as the greatest need for new partnerships for local nonprofits. And I'm wondering, you mentioned a lot of different policies at the state and federal level that you're concerned about. Are there specific policy changes that your group is advocating? And are there ways that members of the public could help with those advocacy efforts, or what would you need to be able to do advocacy in addition to just keeping up with the demands for day-to-day services that your organizations are provided? And I'd like to start on that.
Ours are real straightforward. We need to reauthorize the Old Americans Act. We need to stabilize and put into effect the Community Services Block Grant. Also, the Medicaid reimbursement policies and waiver rules are designed to kick people off the program, not to actually help them. LIHEAP currently is considered at the federal level in a environmental justice program. So keeping your lights on now is considered environmental justice. How dare you? So that program, and then the others I was sort of tapping more into the mental health aspect. Is there is a proposal at the federal level for a federal caregiving act. Components of it have been passed. It would solidify things like making caregivers eligible for services under Medicare as a service, not just the person they're caring for. And so getting the federal Care Act or Caregiving Act approved would be another one. At the state level, I'm a little lost. I can't figure out what their policies are on a lot of things other than to get people off of Medicaid. And I don't see any particular strong policy initiatives that are beneficial to those of us doing this work.
One.
Yeah, policy wise and things that, the Oregon, I would say arguably, advocates have been advocating for a long time. I would say, one is, as Stephanie mentioned, just the rhetoric that is being used, and campaigns such as the No Human Being is Legal campaign to talk about systematic change that need to be made within immigration reform for not just a handful of people or a certain segment such as your dreamers, right? But the 12 million undocumented people in this country, that we need true systematic change to happen in this country. And so it's been a long time coming, and just continue to support other efforts that are going on in the community and in the space. But by and large, right now, if I'm staying focused, it's going to be advocating for our undocumented community, asking for immense reform that has been needed for years, and continue to combat the rhetoric around our undocumented community.
I do want to walk back my statement just a little bit. I see a big giant pile of waste in that investment at Grissom.
Yeah. So let me walk that back.
Because if you think about that $15 million, it's all have to go for Oaklawn or real services or not changing testing. Anyway, it's the world we're living in right now. For us, we really need activation on the local level, and we'll see this more in 2017 when we need to advocate with the county council for those local income tax dollars. The more people that reach out, and this is true for all of these issues. If you send a personal email to your local legislator, it does matter. They do hear that, and it's not hard. So for all of these issues, just send that email. They're easy to find on the Senate website, the House of Representatives, both federally and locally. Take that minute when you hear about these things to go ahead and send that email. You may or may not get a response, but it does in the long run matter.
Thank you, Juanita.
Well, so many thoughts come up when you sit up here and listen to everyone. It's like, talk about, I mean, on the one hand, it's interesting, this whole discussion about, can we just stop talking for a moment about waste, fraud, and abuse? Because I will tell you, I mean, part of what's happening for us is I just had to sign a requisition yesterday to add a person to our medical records department because they're going through our Medicare records and trying to say, you didn't apply there, we're not paying for this. And that's going on. And so I say to them, what do you mean? Well, look at our training on our website. So I look at the training on the website, which is not as good as what we had already done. And so I say that, and they say, oh, well, our training's out of date. So, the training's on a date, you're not gonna pay for this service, and we are having more audits every day than we have had in my 30 years. Because we're trying to find stuff that they cannot pay for. So that's becoming kind of an issue that I'd like to, I don't think there is a policy thing about waste, fraud, and abuse, but I'd like there to be so that we could stop talking so much about that. I will say, at this point in time, I am concerned about, our Latinx, friends, because, you know, we are not supposed to be using any federal funds for their treatment. And, yet we are still protected by the fact that at this moment in time, we don't have to ask. So we aren't. And, then we can continue to treat. But I think that certainly will be at risk, coming down the pike here. And then I think this issue of public policy, how do you advocate and continue your funding? Because the funding you do have is helpful to many people. And yet at the same time, to just be quiet is not an option either. And I think that is our dilemma at this point in time, and makes all of this. In terms of public policy, obviously, I went things like ensuring the Excellence in Mental Health Act, which is CCBHCs out there in the world, keeping Medicaid and marketplace plans in place for specifically for children, justice-involved individuals, homeless, and everyone. You know, supporting any of the critical mental health or substance use disorder programs that are out there. And anything that decriminalizes homelessness and provides funding there, both emergency funding and permanent housing. And then, of course, you know, there is a lot of push on the 988 and the suicide prevention and crisis stabilization of folks. And any legislation around that seems really important as well.
Thank you. Now, as we think about state and federal changes, you heard a lot of specific policies referenced here. You heard at the beginning of the session from Lisa that the presentations will be up on the website. And so there will be an opportunity to go back and look at those. But some folks may still feel like they don't know where to begin. So I would like to invite you to Indiana University South Bend a week from today at 6:30 p.m. There will be a session on understanding and influencing federal and state policymaking. The following week at 6:30 p.m., there will be a session on understanding and influencing local policymaking. And so the goal there will be to walk you through that process of how policymaking actually works and where you can make a difference and make your voice heard. So I invite everybody to attend that. That will be in our cafeteria, and you can, it's on Mishawaka Avenue. You can go in through Esther Street if you want to know more about the policymaking process so that you can become an advocate. We saw in the survey that about 78% of the nonprofits responding said they refer individuals to mental health, and over 56% actually provided some kind of mental health programs. I wonder, you've talked about it a little bit, if anybody had anything to add about concerns about how the people you serve will be affected based on reduced funding, Medicaid and otherwise, for mental health services. Any additional thoughts or comments on that?
I was just thinking as I was looking around is it's very easy for us to be siloed and say, you know, this is my problem, this is what I'm dealing with. But then when I look around the room like this, I think about things like if we have families that are, you know, we have low-income families and families living in poverty who some of their base services that are just helping them survive are eliminated. I start seeing like connections in this room, right? So if we're cutting them off Medicaid while we're also not helping them keep their lights on, that means their base needs aren't getting met. They're also not getting services that they need, perhaps healthcare services, and I see our healthcare providers in here, that they might not be able to go and do that. Then I see programs like I see Madeline with the YWCA, right? So when stress comes, we know we don't all respond appropriately. So that's going to increase the need for domestic violence support. It's going to increase the incident of domestic violence. Then I just think of it, I mean, I just start seeing all the connections with you in the room. And so I think one of the things I'm kind of taking away from this today is while I need to talk about what our needs are, when I need to talk about what's happening to us, and we are 98% government funded, I think we need to be linking arms more directly in meaningful ways, which is why I think this is so great. I need to be talking about what happens to our families, but then how that impacts some of you sitting in the room. And I think if we could do that, that can perhaps hold back some of the way we're all feeling. And it creates a natural support system in some ways. So I guess maybe that's what I'm kind of taking away from the conversation. I'm also thinking about, for many of us, we employ people who use our services or use services that some of you provide. And so I think it's as equally important to be attentive to their needs, ensuring that we have programs in place from an HR standpoint that supports them, and that I'm speaking to myself now, setting an example in terms of accessing those services and saying, yeah, I'm struggling too. This is hard for me. I know it's hard for you. So that's kind of maybe my takeaway from this and what I've seen based on this discussion.
Which really gets back to our opening keynote on working together collaboratively and recognizing we're all in this similar situation.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add, and going back to your question, Dr. Benyon, and Bonita, you alluded to it, as we looked at the funding changes, the public policy changes, and how it's going to impact the overarching community, broadly speaking, is that many of the funding and policy changes are, especially that are tax funded and state funded programs, have really shifted to attestation. So attesting that you are a lawful permanent resident and or hold legal status or U.S. citizenship in the country. And so now we're looking at places like our Franklin County Health Department, where maybe we're looking at what services they provide that are not being impacted by these dollars. We're looking at systems within our schools and adult education and English classes. And so undocumented people or folks that don't want to, frankly, attest their legal status on these forms are being impacted. We're looking at our health providers and mental health providers, and are we going to be able to opt into services as Bonita alluded to? So that is going to be and going to have an immense chilling effect, not only on those who are undocumented people, but also those who are legal permanent residents and or others who simply don't want to fill out that question and or provide that information, which will have an immense ripple effect on the state and health of our community, not only those most marginalized, but just overall.
Which I think, the issue there too is just how we shift costs, So it will be this thing of, we are seeing much higher acuity in our people who are very ill out there. And that means more drain on the emergency departments, more drain on law enforcement, more drain on jails, more drain on lots of other partners in all of this. And that's a concern, because if we can get them treatment, we don't have to drain and cost, it shift those costs. Let's do it where it's going to be the most effective in the first place instead of well.
And I want to shout out to Oaklawn's crisis intervention team, the ability to call that. It's been really beneficial to us here at the library. Historically, we know libraries see far more use when there's economic downturns. And I think if you listen to economists, there's no doubt that's coming, right, with the increased levels of unemployment amongst federal state workers. That has a trickle-down effect. Businesses are holding back from spending. So we are talking also about a generation of young people that graduated high school in the pandemic. They're graduating, they got their first jobs, they can't afford housing. And now this like the word of the day is uncertainty. Again, we dealt with that during the pandemic as leaders, unprecedented, right? This is, I just worry about our young people and their young adult years. It's graduated high school, really hard times. Now we're like, nobody knows what's happening ever, day to day. And so I do think that's going to have an impact on the mental health of our young folks, and that concerns me. And then the more you cut services like Oaklawn and real services and the way that we're treating and just talking about human beings that have migrated, like the whole thing is like just kind of a storm waiting to happen, I think, in the mental health space. But I want to also acknowledge, like, every person in this room is working to make sure that we're there for the people in this community. And I like to remind people, Fred Rogers said, look for the helpers. I like to say, let's be the helpers. And you all in this room are the helpers. Keep doing that. Don't lose the hope that we can make a difference in South Bend and in the larger region.
Such a great point. We wanted to leave about 10 minutes for questions. So if you have some, maybe we can take one of the handheld mics and you can just raise your hand. We want to remind everybody that there are ways people can help these organizations, as you know, because many of your organizations need the same help, whether it is upping your giving, in-kind donations, volunteerism, grant identification and assistance, volunteering, advocacy, or other forms of engagement with these organizations and with each other. And you have the tables in the ballroom where you all can think more about how to collaborate and partner. And we'll have a session on collaboration so we can think about how to be the helpers together in this community. Are there questions from the audience for the panelists? You want to start?
Good morning, Stephanie Merrifield, the founder of the Women's Chapel. I have a question for the panelists, but particularly for Benita. You mentioned some of the statistics and Juan addressed them very thoroughly, but I want to bring to the forefront another dynamic that's afoot right now. There are roughly more than 400,000 African-American women who have been downsized from two sectors in particular. And you're nodding, so I know that you know what I'm speaking about. So as a faith leader, I see a very viable means for collaborating if Oaklawn, as a test pilot perhaps, is willing to work collaboratively. Because we have a great number of people who are faith leaders. They influence a congregation of varying sizes who are ill-prepared, but could be prepared if we work together. So I want to propose in an open forum and say that as one who has done that work in particular, I'm very interested in it because it isn't just I'm concerned for St. Joe County, of course, but I'm concerned for all of those, some of them are single heads of household who have children and the impact that mom or dad can have on their children and the propensity toward a whole season of ACEs developing that we haven't even mentioned. And I said nothing of the 500,000 that left the workforce during the pandemic and have not yet returned. So whatever dynamics they're dealing with, we need to be more innovative. And while I'll admit that very often the church is not innovative in doing outreach, I have a proposal for you.
I think that sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you. Another question? See a hand here and there.
Thank you. Mine's not so much a question as a statement. Christina McGovern with Youth Service Bureau, St. Joe County. I think it's great that we're collectively all in this room. The panel has done an outstanding job conveying what the issues are that we're all facing, but we're kind of preaching to the choir here. And so what I think is really critical and important and something that Jeff pointed out, we have to talk about what we're doing and what the benefit is that we are providing to this community. And I think that that is the key. So we have to be able to convey to the rest of our community, to business leaders, elected officials, those with influence, the benefit that we are all providing to this community and what will happen if we are not here. I think that's vital. There's so many incredible things that are happening, and we just need an entity to kind of help us amplify that message. That may be something that the Community Foundation of St. Joe County, if you look at what the Community Foundation, the Central Indiana Community Foundation has been doing, that is exactly what they've been doing over the past 6 months, is amplifying that message, that this impact, that gap that we are serving in this community. So I think that it's really great that we're kind of collectively seeing what we're facing. But again, we're kind of preaching to the choir. We need to have this in front of another audience.
And this is a good point, because sometimes what we hear from the public is the opposite, right? These are organizations that are not contributing to the tax base because of a tax exempt status in many cases, and therefore they're somehow a drain on the community, and so that message becomes doubly important.
Can I comment on something you just said? Which was, see, and because I've heard this, particularly in business circles, how, Jeff put up the two things and we're kind of this little thing in the middle, is the idea that nonprofits are a drain on the community. I have heard that more than once. I went to 2 economic development presentations recently that talked about all the amazing things that different sectors are doing. And neither of those were nonprofit organizations mentioned as a sector. And do you know how many people we employ? I don't know the number. That's a question. It's a lot, right? It's a lot. And those people pay taxes. Those people buy products in the community. Those people have spouses, loved ones, children who either go to the schools, get a job in our communities. And so I think that's an important part of the message as well. I had written myself a note about the idea of stop privatizing, because we've heard this, you need to act more like a business. I get sick of hearing that. We are a business. We don't have to act like one. We are. So, and this idea of privatizing programs that are built on compassion and filling gaps that neither government nor business will. And so I'm right there with you. And I think that's part of our message. Is we are a key part of this community. We are doing things that nobody else will do for money that no one else would do it for, because you're a business. And we need to tell the story about what happens. And again, those linkages in this room that exist, if these systems, if this network, if that tiny little bubble is no longer here. And so I'm 100% with you on that.
Excellent. And not just a service provider, but an important employer as well. Okay, last question.
Oh, so I'm gonna make a statement. And I'm gonna bring a dark cloud first. I'm gonna challenge a little bit about what she just said, to say that I think we're in extraordinary times. And that when we see on a institutional level, federal, state, that people are being asked to declare you're with me or against me, that means that we're at a turning point where all of us are gonna be put in that situation. We are not going to have the choice to sit in the middle anymore. And that means all of our organizations. I mean, so the reason I'm saying I'm challenging that a little bit is because I think we're past the point where we prove our value and we get funding, because it's not about that anymore. It's about whether or not you are on the right side or the wrong side. And if you're on the right side, you get the funding. And if you're on the wrong side, you get punished. And when you're on the wrong side, it seems like it's for people in need. And so that changes the game in my mind. But I also believe that trying times is a time for innovation and a time to break the way we normally do things, and to think about how we can reimagine ourselves into something stronger and more valuable. I think that's an enormous challenge right now, but I am the CEO of Nexus Neighbors, and we are an organization that helps people with mental, we are actually a tool. We're not an organization. We do have a couple people that help people, but we're basically a tool. We're a technology company, a harm reduction word you're not allowed to say anymore, which puts me on the wrong side. A harm reduction technology company that becomes a tool to help neighbors and employees support one another when anyone who just wants support with mental health or substance use challenges. But my point is that the innovation of what we're doing and the reason that we're here, which is to connect and work together, is what's going to save us. Like, we can no longer stand alone because we will be punished. And the only way we avoid that is by working together and supporting each other. And I'm concerned that we don't understand the gravity of the situation because we're stuck in the turmoil of everyday survival, which I am stuck in as well. So I just, as an example, my peers who are working for me, I could not sustain them and the innovation of the technology I'm working for. So I worked with Light. So some of you know my peers are out there now working for Light. She's like, we have funding for peers. That's not a problem. We don't have funding for the infrastructure part. So I'm like, great, you take the peers, I'll take the infrastructure part, and let's work together. Like, we've got to do more of that, a whole lot more. I mean, there's so many people that we know each other, we know the services, and we're replicating them still. And we can, what I'm trying to communicate to people is it doesn't mean more money. If we work together, we can do that without needing more funding, a whole lot more funding, maybe a little bit. Coordination is what comes into play when you start doing that, funding for that. But yeah.
We're at 11, so I do want to stick to the program time. Part of my job is the moderator, but that's an excellent point, and it is a perfect bridge to the next session. Folks will have a chance, I think, for a little bathroom break on collaboration workshop. And so we want to talk about collaboration. That gets us thinking and starting and recognizing the need for it. So thank you very much. And a big round of applause for our panel.
Let's get started, and then as people join us, they will just have to catch up. So we have been hinting around the edges of this all day today, and I've already seen a lot of collaboration happening, and we've been bringing this up all day. And so this is our chance to dive in. Lisa is calling this a workshop. This is our chance to not just talk about collaboration, but to begin to make some concrete plans. So I'm Anna Sawatsky, director of The Source, which is Elkhart County's system of care, our equivalent of SJC Cares. If you would like to be on our mailing lists for trainings and consortiums, get me your information and we'd love to have you. One of the things the thing I love most about social work, and it took me a long time to decide what I was going to do my master's in and all this stuff. And once I started in the first class, I learned the phrase PI. And I thought, yes, this is why I'm here. And PI is person in environment. And it's this idea that a person does not just exist on their own, but they exist in an ecosystem. And this panel was a beautiful example of that, the interrelatedness of everything that goes into a person and into their mental health. The other thing that goes along with this is that the same things we see at the individual level often then happen at the systems level. And so I'm situating this collaboration discussion in that. So in therapy, in individual work, we'll sort of talk about this. What can I control? How do I act on the things that I control? How do I let go of the things I can't? And then there's also, I think at the system level, this kind of what can I work around? So as we're talking about all of these big policy, funding, state level, important national level things that we're talking about, even local level, for each of us, there's this discernment point of what can I give my attention to? What are the things that I am going to push and advocate for? I'm going to really get in there. What are the things I am going to let go of? Because I trust that other people are doing this well and I can't. Because if I'm doing that, I can't do this. And where are we going to kind of work around what's there? And to me, collaboration lies exactly kind of in the middle there. It's this way of working together to figure out how together are we going to advocate for what we need to, let go of what we can't, and still make things work. And so that's what we're going to kind of work through a little bit today here. So let's start out thinking about, and what we're going to do is complexify collaboration a little bit, hopefully to give us some more clarity. So starting out, what I would like you to do now is think of a time when you collaborated.
This might be that you were serving a client and you collaborated with another agency to make sure they got the right services. It might be at an agency level when you did a project or a program or a grant application with somebody else. It might be you put on an event together, whatever it is. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about what it was, what that situation was, and then to really think through what about that collaboration worked well, or even what made it work well. And then what did not work, or what were the challenges? So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to pair up. A group of 3 would be okay. Don't do 4, you won't have enough time. And I'll let you decide, is it more beneficial to find somebody you don't know and share with that person? Or are you sitting with somebody who's within your agency where it would be helpful to kind of process this together? So I'm going to give about 5 minutes. That little gray box was supposed to be a beautiful little timer that was going to do its thing and play nice music. It's not working. So I will just tell you when you're at about 2.5, so you'll know to switch people. So we're going to do that now. So find somebody, discuss a time that you were involved in a collaboration, what worked and what did not work.
I can't think of what didn't work.
Well, I think sometimes like other groups want to be more filming with Philadelphia outreach. Like that's the problem. Like I went in out. Other agencies like, well, we have to do a lot of training, but just are safe and prepared. And so there's a delay because they've got like higher standards. It slows things down. So that's our problem. I've got to wait for others to get a level of proficiency and training that they're comfortable with. If you're willing to go out.
It does the urgency of warning.
So.
Yeah, I mean, other than that is. Right. And at least when it comes to like foundations, there's limited dollars, right? All these requests. There's like, well, do I really want to collaborate with you? Because you're doing for the same grant. And so what they're doing sometimes now is actually about like they're only looking for like multi-agencies. They want to like multiple agencies coming together and collaborating, not just one. Yeah.
So you're saying.
From like around up.
In time.
You're right. Or how about like people don't carry their culture, like the pharmacy, it was a big collaboration. One, right? So why didn't that work? Why didn't that work?
Done.
It's not just the responsibility of the motion.
Yeah,
And it's not this. There's who's in charge.
right. Yeah,
Clarity.
goals. Yeah.
And yet, yes, the interest of this conversation. Pharmacy.
Yeah.
They don't need.
Right. Right. Good way to around too.
Yeah.
But.
Well, the relationship starts.
Right. That was just like-
They've been.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. I thought it was internal. Yeah, I think that was more the left. Did you go back to the indication?
They all decided. Like, yes, not the student, but they went.
It's definitely the school corporation having shut down. Right, sometimes like external factors, yeah, like losing funding completely. taking it down. Yeah. Yeah, the pharmacy is a good example about not only clarity of roles and responsibilities. People keeping up to their side of the deal. And it's, yeah, you can have to go through that. Hopefully that'll be helpful, not only Bowen, but like to make the walking site. There also.
Oh, I'm leaving with some.
They do. Right. You know.
And I see the same thing like in my city work, you know, that I'm available and I can help bring people together, but I don't have like a budget at all of like funds distributed. People ask me for like money for stuff. I'm like, I don't have any budget. Like I can help out. I can be available. I can help promote things. You know, in my work, I try to bring people together to talk and share. But I don't have.
Right. Here I am.
Yeah, I don't have.
Well, we're not, yeah, yeah, so I had somebody tell me.
So we're working.
All right, I'm always jealous when I'm the one that sets these up because I don't get to hear what everybody's saying. I don't get to participate. So help me out here. What were some things that your group said about what worked well or what caused the collaboration to work well? Shout it out.
Great job.
What
are we supposed to be shouting?
Somebody who shared your vision, your mission, some core components of what you wanted to do. Yes, what else?
Something that somebody does, we don't, and something we do that they don't.
You were
If I did that right.
complementary, you had a
Yeah.
different set of skills, mission, purpose. Yes, thank you.
The collaboration works well until you're asking those collaborators to assess themselves or becomes a topic of discussion.
Okay, collaboration works well until you're asking the collaborators to assess themselves or become the topic of the conversation. So moving into the challenges. It was working well until, and then, so yeah, so a challenge can be when something is being asked of the other party that they're not prepared to give. In this case, self-reflection and being named as part of the problem. I happen to know this situation.
Finding the system can be a challenge when the people representing those systems take things personally and offensively.
Analyzing the system can be a challenge when the people representing the systems take it personally and view it as personal and not systemic. Thank you. Other challenges? Yeah.
People want to work together, truly genuine, but everybody is stressed out and nobody has the time to sit down and work out the details.
All the great intentions and often that's the case. Everybody is stressed out and nobody has time to sit down and do it. And often that's because everybody is doing their own work well. So to pull back from that and then think about what feels in setting it up feels extra can be a lot.
Yes.
Yes. What other
I'm
challenge?
gonna steal from my wonderful partners at the Notre Dame Center. It's about having expectations, knowing what the end result is, how we measure what worked and what didn't work. What are we trying to do and how are we gonna make it work or not? That's on them because they.
Yes, so lack of clarity about roles, expectations, end product, deadlines, any of that lack of clarity feels great in the moment while you're setting it up and you have all the ideas, but if you don't hammer those things out well, falls apart. Thank you. Yes.
One of the things that came out in our group was related to a previous point, which is it can be much more efficient to just do it yourself. And you know it will be just the way that you want it, whatever the project is. And then to feign collaboration by saying, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do that. So that it's not really a full collaboration, but it's very efficient.
Yeah. So kind of two things there. One is it's much more efficient sometimes to just get it done yourself. We know this as parents. We know this as employees. We know this in so many ways. And then the other part of this then is these fake collaborations. I saw a quote the other night while I was preparing for this. I think it was a set designer for a theater company who said, collaboration is the word that directors use when they want to gain your compliance. So we'll all just collaborate if that really means you'll all do what I want you to do to participate in this project. Might have issues. Behind you, I think there was a comment.
Yeah, well, it's very much tied to this what we've been talking about, but our comment was it was challenged because the partners didn't fully understand their roles.
Yes.
And I think that's what everybody's been saying.
But each partner does not understand their role when that is not clarified and named.
Yeah, it's exactly what everybody else has been saying, I think.
Yes, thank you. Okay, these are all important. Yes, yes to all of this. So what I want to do now is look a little bit to get really specific on what we mean by collaboration. So I just named this this is what directors say when they want to gain compliance. I also was in a meeting not too long ago where one agency was actively creating programs that kind of detracted from what another agency could do, and then kept talking about collaboration, by which they meant, we'll send you referrals when we can't make that work. Sending referrals can be a legitimate way of doing collaboration. Actively undermining another agency is not so much. So what I'd like to do is complexify this and look at what we call the collaboration spectrum. So is anybody familiar with this framework? Okay, a couple people. Good. I'm glad most people are not. So there are a couple of different things here. One, let's look at the big picture. So we are moving along the collaboration from loose affiliations to tighter networks and affiliations. That's this orange line at the bottom. Another way this is laid out broadly is moving from turf, so defending our turf, to trust. I don't like that. I was going to take that out. We'll talk about why in a minute, but I left it there so that we could talk about it. So all the way over here on the left, we have compete. So this is where we are competing for clients, competing for resources, competing for attention, competing to be, sometimes I think, the person who frames the conversation around that issue, the one who is known as the agency that frames that conversation. Moving closer along this collaboration spectrum, we have coexisting. So we're no longer competing. I'm not going to take your clients or your funding. We're not really going to work together, but we'll agree to disagree. We both exist within this climate, and that's okay. The next one we're looking at is communicating. So we are now sharing information. This is a very loose affiliation. We do some networking. I might send you a relevant webinar I know about coming up that's relevant to your agency. We might meet at these kinds of events and have a good conversation. We do some networking, we communicate. That's about the extent of it. Moving into cooperating, we're getting a little tighter and closer here. So these are informal interactions. We work together on discrete projects, activities, programs. It's as needed, less formal. I think there's kind of quite a bit of interaction, but less formal. Moving into coordinate, we are now systematically adjusting our work and aligning with each other so that we each achieve greater outcomes. This might involve MOUs, it might involve formalized structures for how we interact with each other. Moving up to collaborate, this is now longer term thinking. This is where we're thinking, where do we together want to get long term? Shared mission, some shared goals, and then shared decision-making and shared resources to some extent. Quite a bit tighter, quite a bit more formal, and it's got that element of longer term, bigger picture thinking about how our agencies are going to interact with each other, how we as individuals are, etc. And then integration is the last one here. So we now have fully integrated programs, planning, funding. This might be a merger of boards, it might not, there might be some shared fiscal agency, but this is now we have integrated in a way that we're no longer exactly two organizations, but we have integrated. Why do you think I don't like the turf to trust aspect of this? Any thoughts? Yes.
we shouldn't necessarily act as if the goal for everybody is to get to the right side of the chart. You could have different reasons for working with different organizations at different times, and you could have perfect trust, but cooperation may be what both organizations need and benefit from rather than full integration.
Thank you. Yes, we should not be acting like integration is the goal, or that we're getting more virtuous and righteous as we move along this spectrum. Even compete can potentially have a spot. We need partners at all of these levels. I was thinking about this on the car over. What is the role of compete? Is there a way to positively phrase compete? And I was thinking, if there is an agency working with a particular population, providing a particular service, and they are not doing a good job, and we have tried to collaborate and help them do a better job, and they're simply not doing a good job, for another agency to then provide that same service or serve that same population, in a way, is competition, and it is what is best for the client. So even that one, I think, can have a role depending on what's happening in society. So there is a place and a role and a time for each of these types of partnerships. And I would argue that we all need all of them in different ways at different times. So here's a little case study. This is an event that we at MHAM did last week on Thursday. My son, who is a graphic designer, is horrified by this flyer. I couldn't even show it to him. This is a mess as far as he's concerned. All those things, they're not spaced right. All the colors, it just, ew. To me, in nonprofit leadership, this is a beautiful thing. Look at this. So let's look together. So this is also the MHAP, the Source, and Elkhart County Community Corrections participate on the Elkhart County Suicide Prevention Coalition. Together, we put on an event last Thursday for youth and their families related to youth mental health and suicide prevention and awareness. So I want to put it up here with the collaboration spectrum. So MHAP, the Source, and Elkhart County Community Corrections all participate in the Elkhart County Suicide Prevention Coalition, working together to kind of achieve that portion of our goals. So where do you think we are on the collaboration spectrum in relationship to the Elkhart County Suicide Prevention Coalition? Coordinate. Yeah, so we've sort of systematically aligned our work in some way. We've joined this coalition so that each of us can achieve greater outcomes. And in fact, when we got we're currently working under a SAMHSA grant. We just ended year one of a 4-year grant. And when we got this last year, and youth suicide prevention was one of our stated goals, I had gone to them and said, could you guys be my work group for this? I could create this other whole work group, or would you guys be willing to do that? They agreed to that. That worked well for them. That would bring in youth focus. Elkhart County Community Corrections does not serve youth, and yet Cindy was representing them. And when we talked about doing this whole event as a project of the coalition, she said, well, yes, anything we can do that it reduces the chances of people getting to Elkhart County Community Corrections, I want to participate in. So this is, so she was willing to put her full energy into that. So yeah, that's probably a coordination. If we look at Safi, Basher Children's Home, and Heart City Health, they agreed to be sponsors, so they paid some money to the event. They had vendor tables at the event so that they could provide resources and services to families. And yeah, I think that was their role. So where would you put them on the collaboration spectrum with this event? Cooperate. I was kind of thinking cooperate. So it was for a discrete event or project. They contributed to it financially and with their time. It helped to meet their goals of reaching out to youth and families. They also invited their families to the event. I should have said that. So they were sort of in that cooperate mode. University of Notre Dame. So Taylor Nicoletti from Notre Dame was our keynote speaker. In addition, though, when we had applied for this SAMHSA grant, she had written us a letter of support from Notre Dame saying that they would twice a year provide suicide prevention education for youth, families, and providers in Elkhart County so that we could, well, so for us, it meant that we were getting high quality, excellent education for youth and families in Elkhart County and providers. And for them, it was helping them expand their reach into Elkhart County. They're pretty St. Joe focused. They needed the connections that we could provide. So for this event, they were keynote speaker and they did some breakout sessions. And then we had this larger context of a letter of support from them where we're more paired together. Where do you think they are on the collaboration spectrum with the source?
Communicate, share information.
Communicate. So they're sharing their expertise, their information. Yeah. I mean, in a sense, that's kind of how that event worked. The fact that we have this letter of support and we've looked together at over these next 4 years, your goal is to have more connection in Elkhart County. Our goal is to provide excellent services to children, youth, and families in Elkhart County. Puts us in a collaborate role or maybe coordinate, but we have this letter of support tying us together in ways that are significant for both of us and help each of us achieve desired outcomes. And then we have on here a bunch of businesses that provided some money. I don't know where that fits in the collaboration spectrum, but let's acknowledge that that is really, really helpful. Another complexity on here, so we've already said the source, MPAM, and Elkhart County Community Corrections were cooperating on this event, but the source and MPAM then have, well, I was on the planning council for this. Lisa is on my governing body. We share our event calendars, our secret, not yet released to the public event calendars with each other. Because we learned the hard way that if we don't do that, we will plan really big, significant events on the same day. So where are the source and MPAM on this collaboration spectrum? It's collaborative, yeah. Yeah, I'd say we're somewhere between coordinating and sort of moving into that collaborating of really having the big picture, long-term discussion of if we're going to improve mental health in these two counties, and broader, what are some shared projects and goals? So we're kind of sitting in there. So for one 2.5-hour event on a Thursday night in October, we needed that many partnerships to make this thing happen and that level of collaboration. So think about that. I do want to come back here to the information that Lisa shared about the survey. So I'm only putting 3 of the questions here, and I have the top 3 answers from each of them. So the 32 people who answered the survey, the highest number of them said that they need support in policy and advocacy. Excuse me. The second highest number said they needed support in community outreach and engagement. And the third highest number said they needed support in referral network development. Those same agencies, when asked, what could you contribute to other organizations? The highest number of them said community outreach and engagement. The second highest number of them said staff training and continuing education. And the third highest number said referral network development. And then naming their barriers to forming partnerships were limited time or staffing capacity, unclear roles or responsibilities. We've named these things this morning in our challenges, and competition for funding or resources. So looking at those top 2 questions, what is the hope there? Why do you think I got excited about those 2 questions?
The needs and the helps are aligning.
The needs and the helps are lining up. So many of us said we needed support in community outreach and engagement and referral network development. And many of us said that what we could help with was community outreach and engagement and referral network development. That is, I think Lisa used the word opportunity earlier. That is an opportunity. And we could go down through the whole list and see other kinds of linkages, but just those top three, 2 out of the top 3 lined up. So we're gonna do a little work now. Am I yelling? Oh, it's time. Okay. Okay, we are going to, I thought I was just being too loud when I said that. Okay, so what the exercise here was to get together and think of a future time. A time, a project you want to complete, a grant you want to apply for, a client you want to serve better. And to really be intentional about what do you need in terms of collaboration for that to go well. What kinds of partnerships will you need? At what point on the spectrum? Is there somebody I could draw closer to? Is there a creative way I'm not thinking about how we could get this done? And this has been coming up all morning. There are these creative ideas of how we could get things done. What have I not yet considered? So we were going to get in groups and do that. You'll have to do it on your own. And as a good triple P provider, I would always say, and then when you've thought about that, think about what could get in the way of this working and what would I do if that happened? And so being really intentional about who will I reach out to and how will this work, and planning ahead for how that can work can be really beneficial. So time is up. So we'll stop here. There's an analogy with the mountains at the beginning and the end, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to figure it out and go forth and collaborate.
Thank you so much, Anna. Great job. Ardara and Carl here. I see Carl coming down. And all right, excellent. So our final presentation for the morning is on advocacy. So we actually have to wait here.
All right, let's get started. My name is Carl Hetler. I'm going to invite everyone to stand up and just stretch your arms for a minute. Take a deep breath in and out. One more in breath and out. Thank you very much. You may have a seat. I work for the city of South Bend as a coordinator of homeless outreach. I've been in this job for the past 2.5 years. I've been a pastor here in South Bend for the past 16.
Good morning still. My name is Dara Marquez. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at La Casa de Amistad. And very excited to present here with my friend Carl. It's our first time presenting together, but really honored to share the space and having had the opportunity to reflect around advocacy, which is this last portion that we'll chat on. And I'm very appreciative of the space that we've continued to build throughout this morning. Really appreciated also the presentation about turbulence and how collaboration looks within turbulence as well. So I'll get us started and go from there. But yeah, Carl and I have a few points to chat about today and share, and also welcoming the opportunity to reflect afterwards. But before we get going, I wanted to set the stage around advocacy. And the word that I wrote down that kept coming up in various ways is turbulence. Aside from my role at La Casa de Amistad, I'm also a community organizer within different spaces with undocumented workers that have worked towards advocacy and different campaigns throughout the past few decades. And one of the conversations that we often start off when we're meeting new people is talking about the theory of power. We've talked about the ways that undocumented people may lack access or lack resources within this world that we live in within the United States. Our migration stories have different reasons as to how we've come here to the country. And why we come together is oftentimes the same reason. And it's how we perceive power and how we would like to access power. Not so much to become rich, but sometimes to literally survive. And the theory of power is essentially who holds the power, right? And I really like the figure of the large circles with the for-profit spaces, the government spaces, and then this gap, right, that we've referred to as a nonprofit area. And within the power, if you guys remember about that image, do you guys remember who was the largest circle? The for-profit, yes. And then the second largest? The government. Okay. So when we think about power, and in the shape of a pyramid that I have here, who would you say would be at this top? Corporations, yes. Mhm. And who holds up corporations? The government, okay, good. Yes, so entities that represent the government, and that is also including some of us here, right? And not as individuals, but as places or entities we serve. And then this top again is corporations, what is essentially leading the narrative within this world that we live in. Now, who would you say is at the bottom? These last two, yeah, the people, us as individuals, right? And when I think about advocacy, I think about it also individually, and especially during these times, a moment of reflection as to where we give our time, where we give our attention, and where we want to grow in relationship with, right? And when I think about that, I think about how important that is in a time like today, and in a time of moving towards turbulence and doubt, which was mentioned this morning. And so for me, I like to be at the bottom, because to me, being at the bottom means being empowered, because without its foundation, this pyramid does not exist. And so as we think about advocacy and think about power in ourselves, I want to be turbulent and make it fall, right? For the sake of being able to rebuild it in a way that we do it together. And so again, just appreciate why that importance of advocacy is ever so important to talk about today. So pass on to Carl.
Thanks, Tara. That's powerful imagery. We want to give you some practical tips as you think about ways to get involved with other agencies and passions that you have, and also how can you get more people connected with your agency, with the mission and vision that you're trying to accomplish. And so one very practical area that I've seen work so often is donations as a helpful way for people to get their first step in engagement. But in order to have a good donation program, you have to have clear guidelines on things such as what are your drop-off hours? What do you want people bringing items by to your agency? What are the types of things that are accepted? I know we've gotten guidance with some of my churches from the Department of Health on things like underwear and socks need to be new. Those aren't good things to have donated to pass out to other people, but you get those things donated. What do you do with the things that you don't want that you get given? We develop partnerships with places like Goodwill that can take our unused items so that we're able to accept everything and then also get benefits from passing them along to other agencies that they can work with also for things that they need. And then also understanding what is the legacy that you're trying to accomplish? What is the larger vision in terms of how people can make an impact and how they care for others? I'm going to let Dara share a little bit about how donations connect to legacy.
So in terms of legacy and thinking about what nonprofits are, right? We have talked about how they might be the physical representations of our values. They're the entities and the physical spaces we see in our neighborhoods or that we see on South Michigan Street, right? I'm being biased here with La Casa de Amistad. But these are actual representations of communities and people that may hold the same values as we do. And so we were sharing about how when we think about donations specifically, there's this line that says that you could give your $5 and put a name to it, right? Have it honor someone. And when I think about honoring, I also think about how the values of our ancestors have continued to live on. Myself personally, I'm from Mexico. People that are my ancestors, the individuals, were essentially killed, right? And I was essentially not meant to exist today, based on our history. And so the fact that our ancestors have been resilient and flexible and thinking about how to survive, and then coming into a country like this, an immigrant myself, thinking about what legacy I want to leave when I you know, pass away, or even just thinking about my family members that have passed. And so donation is something often introductory as a way to say, hey, you know, the $5 that I have or the 50 is a way for me to be able to represent that I hold this value, and the importance around donations as well. All right. The next component of advocacy that could also be introductory would be volunteering. Volunteering your time, short-term and long-term. There's various opportunities within our region, within South Bend, that would allow for the opportunity to engage with new organizations and new people. Short-term commitments may look like, you know, I can give an hour or I can give 3 hours in a day. And so oftentimes organizations will allow you to get into a list, and that way you get those regular emails or regular texts to know when those short-term commitments would happen. And then long-terms would be at places where you're now growing into a relationship, and Carl will share more about that. But long-term would mean more hours within the week, more of yourself as well, not only time. We do have some upcoming events that we wanted to share and have the space to allow for folks to share that are in the room. But something is now in November, right? It's can you remind me again? Sorry, Carl. The Homeless Awareness Week. And then we also have another month.
We also have the Restorative Justice Hub is going to be doing an event here in the auditorium at the end of November, connecting people with resources who have been victims of crime and those looking to collaborate and work together. Those are examples of things that we can help share information about. So when you think about volunteering, what are the upcoming events that you can share and collaborate about and promote? Again, on that spectrum that Anna was sharing, where can you help promote other events? For example, this afternoon at the Beacon Resource Center on Lincoln Way, they're doing an employment fair for those who have felonies. It's a great resource that we've been promoting over the past month to help educate and make sure people get those connections that they need. How can we promote and share about other volunteer opportunities and show up there to help connect people who are looking for other ways to volunteer? I also want to mention zones of service that I found really effective, because sometimes people want to help and have a need, but they feel uncomfortable working directly with your population, whatever that situation may be. And so I think about some of the churches that I've worked with and how we would have areas behind the scenes, like our clothing pantry or answering the phone, or people who wanted to help out and volunteer, but they weren't comfortable interacting with people directly. That was a great zone for people to be able to work. Other zones, like a food pantry, are working directly with people in need, but they're very one-to-one and controlled, walking someone through a set area to collect food that they need. Other areas like breakfast meals at places like Broadway Church or Lay the Road or First United Methodist Soup Kitchen can be very chaotic or dynamic, depending on how you want to look at it or how you enjoy those experiences. Those would be places for people to volunteer where they're much more comfortable interacting with people and having those relationships. And so thinking through for the ways that you want people to volunteer, how can you tier and have different levels of opportunity for people to be able to build those connections and to be able to help out? Any other events you wanted to mention? Then the next area then talks about relationships. And as you think about the increasing opportunities that we have to build commitment and connection, what are ways to provide relationships and services to people through one-to-one relationships, walking alongside? The activity that Jeff started us with, talking to someone new, is a great example of how invigorating and refreshing it can be to build a new relationship with someone. And something that I've seen now a couple of years in doing that government work, as opposed to the nonprofit world, is that we have a lot of great agencies and services that government can fund at a higher level, but we don't have the relationships that many of you have with your clients, your guests, the people that you work with, and how important those relationships are. That yes, we need government and even business to help fund at greater levels the programs that need the services and the salaries. But it's the relationships that are really key to provide that ongoing care. Some of the neuroscience research that I know many of you are familiar with says it can take up to 3 years to rewire someone's brain from a substance use disorder. That's a lot of times some people relapsing, falling off, of struggling. And agencies sometimes, as we've heard about, have limits on what they will fund and who will they support, what they require of them. People need friends. They need people who can support and care for them along the way. And the work that you all are doing and opportunities you have to bring volunteers along who can have one-to-one relationships makes a huge difference. One of the areas that pioneered housing first, that we are now, for at least until now, have had as a national model here, was Scandinavia. They've been doing it for decades. And one of the interesting things that they find after a decade of having someone housed, where they are employed, where they're getting the mental health care that they need, where they are in recovery, is that there's still one missing piece, even after a decade of being housed in permanent supportive housing in Scandinavia. And that is friends, relationships. People are still struggling. They haven't rebuilt their social network. And it's an important reminder in the advocacy work that we were talking about here, how important it is to walk alongside people who are struggling, that we are serving, to develop friendships with them as we're able to, because it has a huge value and support for how we care for other people.
And just briefly, reflection within relationships as well, thinking about how we may not talk to each other as often, right? During these times, we hear that phrase often as well during nowadays. And it's a moment where we're in a space that is unrecognizable, that we have never seen this before, or we have never had this conversation before, or we, for the first time, maybe we don't know what to do in a crisis, right? And how are we bringing it back in internally and thinking about it ourselves? And again, going back to the point of relationships, and that being the key, and often in anything, right? Within advocacy now, and speaking more directly around tangible ways that one can be an advocate, aside from building a relationship and having perhaps the network outside of that relationship that could bring in more resources or more information or support, there are also larger ways, right? We often talk about voting and voter registration, being able to be guided via voter guides. We do have some resources outside. Yes. Yeah, we have the League of Women Voters booklet. It's a literal citizen's guide for our representative government. We also have a voter information booklet here. So ways that you can essentially use your power of vote. There's also statewide changes. Someone during the panel also said, I'm confused as to what's going on in the state. And so the state feels pretty local, thinking about also within South Bend. There is primarily narratives that are continuing to push that affect the most vulnerable, would essentially trickle into everyone in our communities, right, in our societies. And so the narrative has often been, which has already been said, is that there isn't enough of something, right, that we are not in abundance, that if someone or something receives more than the other, then we cannot live in harmony or with dignity. And so that is what advocacy combats. It combats that narrative and being able to say, we are people, we are present, there is abundance, right? And we are here to continue to push through that. So there's also the opportunity to engage at state level, can also start locally. So we do have our state representatives and our House of Representatives and state senators. If you go to Google or the Indiana website, it has also been mentioned, but you could put in your address and it'll let you know who your representatives are. It'll give you their phone numbers. It'll give you their emails. So it was mentioned that it's the easiest task that one can do today, that you could write an email and share. And so when we think about it being like a drop in the water in the ocean, watering the ocean, it really does add up. And it allows for the opportunities for those that are advocating on the ground. Perhaps it's what they're being paid for, or perhaps it's what they're being called to do, to continue to push that narrative, and they're not coming at it without any past conversation with legislators. So it's very important to engage with folks in that way.
And KJ earlier mentioned emails are a great way to communicate, but even better than emails are phone calls, because there are a lot of foreign emails that get sent out there, but actually talk to a representative or someone from their staff makes a huge difference, and they take note of that when people take the time to call. I even know one woman in our community who has a government official that she drops a card off to every week as a way to connect and show up for the staff. What are the ways you can build relationships with the staff? When you talk about state committees, like Dara mentioned, state representatives, do you know which committees your representative sits on? Because they've got lots of different committees that they sit on. Do you know who are the other committee members in your relevant field that you should be reaching out to? One of the things that we know is so important with government work is it's not just about showing up when you want funding or want a bill passed, but you're actually building a relationship also with your representatives to know what are they passionate about, what are they interested in. We're grateful to have the clerk's office here, not only with the voter guide, but voter registration. Hands in the air. How many people are registered to vote? That's great. Take a voter registration form with you if you have maybe a neighbor that you know hasn't voted in a while and want to make sure that they are registered. We're also grateful to have the League of Women Voters here. Not only do they have a guide, but they have other resources that help you know who are your representatives, to get connected about the issues for upcoming elections, to know what is on the ballot. You can also get information from the League of Women Voters. We appreciate both those resources being available so that we can help advocate better and know what is going on in our area. We also have on our MPAM website an interview that Lisa did with the Indiana Council on Mental Health Resources. It's a half-hour interview, but I just want to share some of the highlights to encourage you to go watch that full conversation, because one of the things they talk about in that interview is about some of the successes that we've seen here in the state. But Nita mentioned programs like SB1 that allows for more funding for crisis resources, and that has been a huge increase in support, that we not only have a phone number to call, but have a response team that can go out, and also having a place to go. We now have a crisis center that's also open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for people who are in a mental health crisis. That's because of advocacy work that has been done for years. It came out of tragedy from a shooting death here in South Bend a couple of years ago. It came because a lot of faith leaders with Faith in St. Joe County and We Make Indiana working together, not only here locally, but then gathering across the state to advocate for that important issue. Other things such as HIP has gotten more people access to substance use disorder, and tens of thousands of Hoosiers have benefited because of that. But one of the statistics that we see statewide is that 1 in 4 Hoosiers needs mental health help. And so we need to continue to advocate for important issues such as that. And one of the realities of why that's important to advocate for at the state level is because mental health has some of the lowest philanthropic dollar support. We have some groups here like the Community Foundation, like Ansari Institute, like Valinhos, that are working to address that need here in our local county. That continues to be a big issue that we see. And not only do we see that mental health needs to be better funded, but the average age of psychiatrists is 70 in the state of Indiana. And so there are people that are past retirement, and that's the average age. And so we have this need to increase the pipeline so that we can care for the mental health needs of our future generations. But one of the other encouraging things that they talk about is telehealth, and how that is developed during the pandemic and continues so that more people have access, and something that we can continue to advocate for in our mental health work that we do. We also, she also talks about in the interview about the upcoming legislative session. That's a short session, so there will not be a budget that's being done, but some of the issues that were mentioned by our panel, such as criminalizing homelessness, is one of the things that the state will consider again. And so it's definitely something that you're interested in, you should advocate for and be aware of. But funding for the next budget year that will happen then in 27 is a very important area, with things like a hospital assessment fee that is up for being considered, that might really impact how we fund our not only our mental health, but our physical health services as well. And the importance, as we've talked about today with our panel, about connecting mental health to other services, because it's not just about having that diagnosis and treatment and care, but it's having enough food on the table, it's being employed, it's making sure your kids are cared for also. All those things are also related, an important part of what MPAM is doing. So I encourage you to check out that full video on our website that Lisa does an interview, is really helpful. The other thing I want to make a note about is about finding the connections then with people. So you build that relationship with them and find ways to help support and advocate. What are the things that your representatives are passionate about? Sometimes it's helping them see the story and see the need, but also sometimes it is just a dollar issue. And so two great examples that we've done here locally is with both Motels for Now and Oaklawn's Crisis Center is showing how we are saving the county money by diverting people from the emergency room and from jail, by providing housing first, by providing crisis services. We're saving billions of dollars here locally because of the work that Oaklawn and Motels for Now is doing. And those are important messages that we have to advocate, that we are helping people when they're concerned about budgets, when we're seeing these cuts that are coming down, the preventative, proactive work that we're doing is making a difference. So as part of that advocacy that you can think about doing is how are you showing an impact and meeting the needs and the questions that your legislatures have, address what their issues are, their concerns are, meet them where they're at, and address their concerns.
Yes, and those conversations, I know that it may seem daunting to reach out to a legislator. Perhaps, at least for me personally, has often been because I feel unprepared or I feel like I don't have enough understanding or knowledge of how politics work, right? Or how policy changes come about. And oftentimes your own story is enough to inspire even another question, or perhaps the opposite, for one to recognize and quite literally expose the lack of understanding or the lack of desire from representatives or legislators to understand what constituents are asking for. And around the topic of funding, right, there are those positive examples where advocacy has been able to provide more resource or open the doors for more people to access healthcare. Oftentimes thinking about money, and it's something that was mentioned earlier with those 15 to 16 million that were approved by the budget committee in the state of Indiana. Just to give context and for educators in the room as well, if you could share, if you do have that information, but our budget committee handles all of our state budget, right? And more than 50% of it is essentially generally given to education, right? Then the rest is then spread around based on needs. Ultimately, the budget committee holds that power. And so when we think about the power of decision, it starts with your voice and it starts with speaking with a legislator and doing what we can to be out of our comfort zone as a person or within a group. But then it gets to the one single person. And that is a really scary thought to think about, right? That decisions for the whole state really rely on one person. But that one person also represents a whole system. And that whole system is primarily meant to sustain the economy of this state. And so when we think about what sustains, then we know that values are being questioned or values are being compromised, as we've heard today. And in regards to how Indiana is budgeting its money, it's very clear where that value lies, right? And it values in profit, given those 15, 16 million that were granted to incarcerate people, right? Because the concept is the same for all of us. You don't need to be undocumented to know that this is something of concern, because if that's that visible, what does it look like for the things that are not as visible as incarcerating undocumented people is? So just along the lines of how advocacy plays a role within that narrative and continuing to be consistent here in the state of Indiana. We do have some reflection questions, and I realize we don't have too much time, so we'll read through this. I invite you all to take a picture. Carl and I worked through the questions of what might be useful for us to think about if we're wanting to be more involved and engaged, aside from what we do every day, right? Especially for service providers, or even how could we inspire others, or what can we inspire for others to think about? And so along the lines around volunteering, along the lines of donating, along the lines of being engaged with other organizations and even collaborating. But one of the first questions here is, why do I want to volunteer? What cause am I passionate about? We talk about passion again. What skills can I offer? Even though I might not have $5 now, at least like I'm skillful in reading Excel sheets or something, you know? How much time can I commit? What type of environment do I excel in? Am I prepared for the emotional demands? What do I hope to gain from this experience? Travel considerations and transportation availability. It affects clients, but also ourselves. Setting personal boundaries and trustworthiness of organizations. And to clarify the trustworthy of organizations and not necessarily the perceived trust that we have in our communities. But it's actually like, is the organization willing to walk with me throughout these questions, right? It's reciprocal. It's the value of reciprocity and being able to rely on an organization, because I am giving myself, right? Quite literally my body and myself to their mission or their work. So these are some questions to consider.
A practical example of this that I wanted to share is that there's a lot of people who care about those who are unhoused and want to provide things such as food or clothing. But we've had a lot of challenges recently here in the city of South Bend with people showing up on the sidewalk to pass out food or give out clothing. Because what ends up often happening is there's a lot of discarded food and clothing left behind the scenes afterwards that then neighbors and other cleanup crews from the city have to come through and deal with. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is work with agencies that want to volunteer and help out to think through questions like this and help them understand some of the complexities that they have a desire to help out, they have skills to offer, but they have to understand the bigger picture and some of the challenges behind that. That we often, in part because of a lot of the great affordable housing that's being built here in downtown, we don't have a lot of empty lots anymore where people are just hanging out during the day. And also we have a lot of great services that we can connect people to. And so trying to get some of these new volunteer groups to partner with existing agencies around the downtown area, instead of just doing their own thing, but see the larger picture of what is happening. So people don't just show up for a meal, but instead are going to different places where they get ongoing support, where they get mental health care and resources also. These are some of the challenges that we're continuing to work on as things change here locally in our environment. I also want to mention as we get ready to wrap up, there's lots of different ways that you can get connected and advocate even here locally. One organization, Michiana Observer, publishes every week a list of all the different government meetings that are going on in the area. So for example, later today is this morning was the South Bend Board of Public Works, but tonight is the Police Review Board will be meeting tonight at the new City Hall. Coming up on Monday will be the South Bend Planning Commission, the Board of Parks, Lakeville Town Council meet also on Monday, the Historic Preservation Commission, North Liberty, and Mishawaka City Council. And so encourage you to be informed about ways that you have to advocate and connect to different agencies to know what is going on. Not only can you show up, but you can collaborate and work with others to communicate, share that information with others around you so that they know what is going on and be involved in the community. There's lots of great ways you can get involved and plug in and find those different levels like Anna talked about of ways that you want to not only communicate, but collaborate and ultimately integrate with others.
All right, so my name I mentioned is Dara, but my middle name is Itzel, which is the name of a Mayan princess. And I always joke that I do come from royalty. But there is a Mayan phrase, it's a philosophy around unity and interconnectedness, which goes again along the lines of what we've shared today. And so I wanted to invite folks to repeat after me. I promise that it is translated, so you won't be pranked into saying something you shouldn't. But the philosophy, it's referred to as in la quech, which means I am another you. Right? So in la quech. I will say it in Spanish and then I will say it in English, which you can repeat. Okay. You're also welcome to say it in Spanish with me. Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. So this is again called In La Quech. It's a Mayan philosophy of unity. You guys are also welcome to search for it if you want the text. But it's a reminder of our interconnectedness and our work towards unity it is not black and white, right? We talked about, again, turbulence and the need to go into doubt and to lean in on that. Again, thinking also around COVID times, and there was mention of the creation of telehealth and the flexibility around being able to treat others via our screens. I know that there is often some feelings around not being able to connect with people in a person to person, but being able to uplift the concept of flexibility and wanting to work towards innovation and creativity, the importance of that now as well within engagement and wanting to see those pathways that we may not have seen in the past. And so thank you again for the time and being able to share about advocacy. I know Carl and I will hang around as well and touched up on things that were very deep, much more deep. And if you want to learn a little bit more, we'd be happy to share more information.
Thank you.
Hey, hello, I'm Ronald Plummer. I'm the Chief Public Service Officer here at the library. And I just have a few closing remarks. I'd like to thank, or we'd like to thank everyone here who has participated and contributed to these important conversations. And your willingness to learn and support one another is what makes events like this so meaningful. And of course, the event wouldn't be possible without speaker Jeff Shuck, panelists from Oaklawn, SJCPL, Real Services, and La Costa, and the moderator, Dr. Benyon. Anna Swatsky for hosting and collaboration workshop, and Dara Marquez and Carl Hetler for sharing practical advocacy tips. And we're also equally grateful for all of the resource vendors for sharing valuable information and connections to support and ongoing community needs. And before everyone leaves, I wanted to point out there's a QR code on the back of your program, and that leads you to an evaluation form. And that is really important. And your feedback is actually essential in shaping future NPAM programs and ensuring they meet the needs of our community. And finally, I can't not remind you that the library here is a lasting resource. We offer a wide range of materials on mental health and wellness and access to community services. And our staff are always ready to help connect you with the information and tools you need. And we're all about collaboration. And thank you again for your time and commitment. And please access the QR code and the evaluation form. And thank you for building a stronger, healthier, and more collaborative future.